2 hours of LEGO history to fall asleep to, starting with some amazing features they've gotten rid of. LEGO used to sell these magnet sets where you could stick minifigures to your fridge or locker. And the cool part was that you could actually remove the minifigure from the magnetic base. So if you wanted to collect rare minifigures, you could just buy the magnet set and pop them off. It was perfect. But then in 2011, LEGO started permanently gluing all of the minifigures to their bases. And I'm not just talking about a little bit of glue. They were gluing the torsos to the legs too. So you literally couldn't take them apart at all. Fans were furious, and I mean, can you blame them? The whole point of buying these was to get the minifigures, and now they were just stuck to a magnet forever. The reason this happened was apparently due to licensing issues with Star Wars, which doesn't make it any less frustrating. But let me show you something super sick that's been gone for way longer. From 1986 to 1998, LEGO had this thing called the 9-volt system, and it was honestly kind of insane. You'd have a battery box and then these special conductive bricks that had metal lining inside of them. And when you connected them all together, they'd make an actual circuit. No wires, no complicated setup, just bricks that conducted electricity. And then you could add light bricks or sound bricks to make sirens, lights, and sounds. The problem was that these systems were bulky and complicated, especially for younger kids, so LEGO discontinued them. But here's the thing, they actually tried a simpler version back in 2019 with some city sets, and people loved it. It just goes to show that sometimes the old features really were better, even if they were more complex. Now, if you've been building LEGO for a while, you probably remember those raised base plates that used to come with certain sets. I'm talking about the ones with built-in terrain, craters, road patterns, all of that. Castle sets had base plates with rocky textures, city sets had roads already printed on them, and space sets had those awesome crater base plates that you could use as ramps. They gave your builds instant scale and made everything feel more complete right out of the box. But LEGO phased them out because of cost, packaging, size, and the fact that they were pretty fragile and could crack if you weren't careful. Now we're stuck with either flat plates or having to build roads ourselves, which takes way more time and pieces. But the worst part, those old crater base plates from Classic Space sell for like $35 to $40 each on the secondhand market. So even if you wanted in on the action, you'd have to pay a lot of money. Speaking of classic themes, let me tell you about something in the castle theme that gave it way more life. LEGO used to include these massive pre-molded pieces that let you build rock formations really easily. People called them burps, which stands for big, ugly rock pieces. And even though the name sounds bad, they were actually super useful and loved. You could snap them together and have a full wall around your castle in minutes, instead of spending an hour building it brick by brick. But LEGO discontinued them because they wanted to shift toward fully brick-built structures for better play value. And I get it, building everything from scratch does give you more flexibility and lets you customize your builds. But at the same time, those burps were iconic, and a lot of people miss being able to throw together a castle that quickly. But castle wasn't the only theme that lost something important. Pirate ships used to come with real fabric sails that had printed designs on them, and they made the ships feel so much more authentic and premium. Like, you'd open the box and see this actual cloth sail, and it just felt special. But these were gradually replaced with plastic sails or brick-built alternatives, and honestly, they're just not the same. The original cloth sails are now expensive collector's items, and some fans have even started making DIY replacements because they miss them so much and can't afford the real ones. I don't know about you, but I'd rather have a real fabric sail than a plastic one any day of the week. Going back to castle for a minute though, there's one more thing I have to mention. These large round shields with a single center stud that you'd see in sets like the 6030 catapult were fan favorites for castle builds. They were simple, they looked great, and you could attach them to minifigures or build them into walls. But they were phased out for more complex printed designs or just regular shields. And sure, the new shields have more detail, but there was something really satisfying about those simple round shields that you just don't get anymore. Oh, and speaking of that catapult set, let me tell you about another thing that's changed. Old LEGO castle sets had functional catapults that could fling projectiles across an entire room. The catapult set from 1984 had this powerful Technic-based mechanism mechanism that could launch things with serious force. But modern catapults are way weaker, or they've been replaced by stud shooters, which are fine, I guess, but they're just not as satisfying. There's something about pulling back a catapult arm and watching something fly across the room that stud shooters just can't replicate. But at least catapults are still around in some way. Flick fire missiles, on the other hand, are basically gone. These were introduced in 2006, and they were super simple. You would just flick them with your finger, and they'd shoot out. They weren't as reliable as spring-loaded shooters, but they were way more fun to use. While they're still technically available in some sets, they've mostly been replaced by those spring-loaded shooters and stud shooters, since they're more consistent. Sometimes I feel like LEGO prioritizes function over fun, and this is a perfect example of that. Now, this next feature being removed does kind of make sense, but is still definitely sad. LEGO trains used to connect with magnetic couplers, which was awesome because you could easily attach and detach cars. But small magnets became a safety hazard, especially for younger kids who might swallow them. So in 2005, LEGO introduced this huge sealed buffer beam to keep magnets in trains to make them safer. And now you have to use different connection methods that just aren't as convenient. I totally understand why they did it, but man, those magnetic couplers were so easy to use. But if you think losing train magnets is bad, let me tell you about something that's even worse. From 1987 to 1994, LEGO made 3 legendary monorail sets with futuristic elevated trains and automatic switching tracks. These things were incredible, and people absolutely loved them. But here's the thing. Single pieces of track now sell for $20 or more on the secondhand market. And LEGO has said that the molds are gone and they won't be coming back, despite massive demand. There have been multiple LEGO Ideas projects trying to bring the monorail back, and people have even started 3D printing replacement tracks because the demand is so high. But LEGO just won't do it, and honestly, it's one of the most requested features that LEGO refuses to bring back. But another one is the power function system. This ran from 2007 to 2018, and it was super reliable and standardized. You had motors, lights, and simple plug-and-play connectors that just worked. But it got replaced by Powered Up in 2018, which uses Bluetooth and is supposedly more advanced. The problem is that Powered Up is way more expensive and way more complex to set up. And sure, Bluetooth is cool and all, but sometimes you just want something simple that works without having to connect it to an app or worry about battery life. Power Functions was perfect for that, and a lot of people still prefer it over Powered Up, but at least motors are still around, because pneumatic systems, on the other hand, are basically extinct. LEGO Technic used to have working pneumatic systems with air pumps, cylinders, and hoses that created realistic hydraulic motion. There were 2 generations of this. Generation 1 from 1984 to 1989, and Generation 2 from 1989 and onwards. These systems offered incredible play features and made Technic sets feel like real machinery, but they're rarely included in modern Technic sets anymore because they're too expensive to produce. And I get it, pneumatics are complicated and add a lot to the cost of a set, but man, those old Technic sets with pneumatics were something special. But while we're talking about complex systems that are basically gone, let me show you the 12-volt train system that ended in 1991. This system had remote-controlled signals, points, and lights that you could automate. When LEGO switched to 9-volt trains, most of these electronic accessories were lost. Fans still miss the advanced automation that the 12-volt system offered, because it let you set up really complex train layouts that could run themselves. Now, you either have to use third-party products or just accept that your trains won't be as automated as they used to be. But let's move away from trains and talk about Star Wars for a second. Back in 2005, LEGO released the Ultimate Lightsaber Duel set, and it included battery-powered glowing lightsabers that you could activate by pressing the minifigure's head. How cool is that? You'd press down on the head and the lightsaber would actually light up, but they were discontinued, mostly because they only had a 3-hour battery life. And honestly, that makes a lot of sense. But Star Wars wasn't the only theme with light-up pieces. The Toa Inika sets from Bionicle in 2006 had light-up weapons with LEDs built in. You could press a button and the weapon would glow, and it was incredibly cool. But just just like those lightsabers, these were discontinued due to battery shipping and cost issues. Bionicle fans still talk about how awesome these sets were, specifically because of those light-up weapons, and it's a shame that feature never came back. But if you think light-up weapons are cool, let me tell you about Exoforce sets from 2006 to 2008. These sets included light bricks connected to fiber optic cables that make the cockpits of mechs glow. It gave them this realistic powered up look that made them feel like they were actually running on energy. Modern mech sets don't have anything like this, and honestly, they feel a lot less impressive because of it. The fiber optics made Exoforce mechs stand out, and it's a feature that I wish LEGO would bring back for modern mech themes. But here's a light and sound brick that's become legendary for a different reason. The 2009 Grand Carousel set included a special sound brick that plays carousel music, and it was only used in that one set. Because of this, the brick sells for insanely high prices on Bricklink, and collectors go crazy trying to find one. It's one of those pieces that became valuable specifically because it's so rare and unique, and you can't get it anywhere else. But now, let me tell you about a theme that completely relied on technology and then lost everything when that technology was shut down. The Hidden Side theme ran from 2019 to 2020, and the sets were designed with rotating elements and colorful pieces that you were supposed to scan with an AR app for ghost hunting gameplay. The sets themselves were cool builds, but the whole gimmick was the app, and in 2023, LEGO discontinued it, which means all that interactive functionality is just gone forever. If you buy a Hidden Side set now, you're only getting half the experience because the AR gameplay is entirely inaccessible. Another theme that had something similar happen is the Nexo Knights theme. From 2016 to 2018, the sets had collectible power shield tiles that worked with an app, but since that app is completely gone now, there's no way to use them again. Around 3 years ago, someone on Reddit noticed that it got taken off the App Store. So I'm not exactly sure when the app got taken down, but I know for sure it's gone forever. Clearly, LEGO has a lot of discontinued tech features, but this next one made people more upset than ever before. LEGO Mindstorms was a programmable robotics platform that taught kids coding and engineering for decades. It was incredible for education, and hobbyists loved it because you could build custom robots and program them to do basically anything. But in 2022, LEGO discontinued Mindstorms in favor of Spike Prime, which is more education focused and less flexible for custom designs. Spike Prime is fine for classrooms, but hobbyists really miss Mindstorms because it gave you way more freedom to experiment and build whatever you wanted. But here's something that's happening right now that a lot of people are worried about. LEGO is actively trying to phase out paper instructions and move everything over to digital-only manuals. And to make things worse, they've already removed artwork from instruction covers, so now they're just generic white backgrounds instead of having cool themed artwork. Fans want physical manuals because it lets them disconnect from screens while building, and the artwork on the covers used to be part of the excitement of opening a new set. Now everything looks generic and boring, and if LEGO goes fully digital, that physical experience is just gone. But that isn't all, because LEGO's also trying to transition from plastic bags to paper bags. The new paper bags are just plain white with faint brick patterns on them. You can't see through them like you can with the plastic bags, so there's no more excitement of seeing all the colors through the bags when you open the box. But I'm still not done, because there's another thing that made opening sets less exciting, but this one happened a long time ago. LEGO used to include these small catalogs inside sets that showed you other sets in the theme or upcoming releases. You'd finish building your set, and then you could flip through the catalog and see all the other cool stuff you could get. But now it's mostly just QR codes or nothing at all, and honestly, it's not the same. I never even got one of these catalogs in a set. This is something that's been gone for a while, but I really wish they'd bring them back. But if you think LEGO hiding things in their sets is sneaky, just wait until you hear how LEGO has been hiding unreleased sets in plain sight. They have an instructions website where you can download PDFs for any set they've ever made. The idea is that if you lose your instructions or buy a used set without them, you can just grab them from the website. But the problem is they upload instructions to their servers before the actual sets are announced. And since Bricklink goes directly to LEGO's own instruction servers for every set in their database, people figured out they could just start guessing set numbers. You type in a number, and if instructions exist, they'll load. So fans just started trying numbers until they found something. The Luke Skywalker lightsaber gift set is one of the most popular cases. People found the full instructions sitting on LEGO's website before LEGO ever said the set existed. But finding instructions requires some effort and mostly luck. So let me show you something that's way more systematic. In 2025, a Reddit user figured out how to use Bricklink's inventory comparison tool to expose canceled sets that were never even announced. Bricklink pulls all its data directly from LEGO's official parts database. When LEGO plans a set, they make a spot for it in the database with every part listed out. And even if it gets canceled, sometimes the data just sits there because someone forgot to delete it. So this guy on Reddit started looking for gaps in set numbers and comparing inventory data. And he found stuff LEGO never wanted anyone to see. An early version of the Bad Batch shuttle showed up with a completely different cockpit design and no speeder bikes. There was a canceled 2021 UCS set that was supposed to have Count Dooku for the 20th anniversary, and way more. Brick Fanatics actually verified all of this by doing the process themselves and finding the same data. So this is 100% confirmed. The thing is though, this exact same database problem happened with LEGO Dimensions too. When the theme got canceled in October of 2017, all the planned Year 3 expansion packs were scrapped. LEGO wasn't going to make them or announce them, but here's what they forgot. They'd already put all the parts data for those canceled packs into Bricklink's database. The same Reddit user who found the canceled Star Wars sets used the exact same comparison model for Dimensions, and they found everything LEGO had planned for Year 3. A Ghostbusters 2016 Holtzman Fun Pack, Knight Rider, Teen Titans Go. There were even mysterious entries labeled connectable that made it seem like LEGO was making an entirely new building concept that nobody knew existed. Now, sometimes leaks come from places like this, but other times they come from places LEGO legally has to use. Before LEGO can sell a set, they have to submit it for safety certifications in every country they sell to. Different regions have different safety standards, so LEGO sends the sets to testing agencies who make sure they meet the standards. And those certification listings are usually publicly searchable on government websites before LEGO makes any announcement. Jay's Brick Blog talked about finding a blurry picture of Gringotts Wizarding Bank in a database way before the set was revealed. Fans who pay attention just check these databases all the time, looking for new sets, and since LEGO legally has to do this, there's no real way to avoid it. But now, let me show you a leak that was just pure stupidity. In March of 2025, LEGO's official Mexico Facebook page posted a 13-second teaser video. Just a short clip showing LEGO bricks building Pikachu's tail. But the problem was that LEGO hadn't announced their collab with Pokemon yet, so this trailer gave away the entire thing. The video was online for maybe a few minutes before someone at LEGO realized what happened and deleted it. But by then, Reddit's LEGO Leaks community had already downloaded and archived the whole thing. So LEGO was forced to officially confirm the collab the same day, because denying it would have been pointless. Apparently, LEGO Mexico just published their announcement early without checking if corporate had given the green light yet, so they really messed that one up. But the funny part is, Pokemon leaked again in early 2026 in an even more embarrassing way. Before LEGO made any announcement about which specific Pokemon sets were coming, fans found product pages live on international versions of Lego.com. The Kanto region badge collection and the Pikachu and Pokeball set were both up with full descriptions and pictures. LEGO made the product pages in advance to be ready for the launch, and someone published them way too early, so fans just stumbled onto them while browsing the website. But if you think leaking 2 sets is bad, let me tell you what happened at the Shanghai trade show in November of 2025. LEGO revealed the Tulip Bouquet set at the China International Import Expo and put the product page live on their website. The page had pictures showing the set from different angles and in different settings, but in one of those marketing lifestyle photos, there were 3 unannounced botanical sets just sitting casually in the background. The Daisy set, The flowering cactus and the peace lily were all on the table behind the tulips, so fans noticed basically immediately. But this isn't even the only time this happened with botanicals. The flower wall set was in LEGO's official promo before there was any announcement about it. Bricks Up documented that LEGO showed the set on their own before they'd officially announced it, exactly like the tulip situation. But it also happened with Happy Plants 2. The sequel to the Happy Plants set got leaked when a low-res promo pic surfaced, showing 2 new plant pots sitting next to the 2025 version. Game Rant described it as a prematurely emerged promotional image from an official LEGO source. But sometimes the mistake is even simpler than that. LEGO posted images of the unreleased 2026 McLaren F1 car when they were supposed to be showing a different version that was already released. So the very first images anyone saw of the new Technic F1 car came from LEGO mixing up their own files. They had 2 McLaren F1 sets with similar names and similar looks, so someone grabbed the wrong images when they were updating the website. But sometimes it's not the image itself that leaks something, it's what's on the packaging. The 2025 Field Flowers polybag had LEGO botanicals printed at the top of the bag, instead of LEGO icons like every other botanical set. This was a small detail that most people wouldn't think twice about, but it basically confirmed that botanicals was splitting off from icons and becoming its own theme before LEGO made a statement about it. Brick fanatics noticed this and predict that this would happen, because another polybag did something similar. When LEGO officially revealed the 2025 Mini Ninja Combo Mech polybag, the packaging had artwork showing a storm destroying a village. This just seemed like decorative box art, until people realized it matched a lot of unannounced Ninjago sets that were rumored to be coming out in 2025. The Storm Rider Mech, the Storm Dragon, and the Dragonian Storm Village all had this same storm theme. So LEGO accidentally confirmed an entire story arc for an unreleased Ninjago wave by printing it on the packaging for a polybag. But now, let me show you something that happens on a regular basis and LEGO just doesn't seem to care. LEGO publishes the official Star Wars magazine through different publishers in different countries. The German edition comes out a month before the UK edition, and the back cover of every magazine shows what free minifigure is coming in next month's issue. So fans in Germany can see what's coming in next month's magazine a full month before fans in the UK even get this month's issue. But now let's talk about the Burrow leak, because it was genuinely insane. On September 5th, 2024, the official LEGO House Instagram posted a photo promoting a Harry Potter designer signing event. Designer George Gilliatt was the main guest, so they posted a photo of him. But in that photo, he's holding a sealed box of the Burrow Collector's Edition set, which at the time hadn't been announced yet. The post went live to hundreds of thousands of followers, and then it got deleted, probably within minutes once someone realized what had happened. But Jay's Brick Blog had already independently verified it was real. A couple days later, LEGO had to announce the Burrow set just like they did with Pokemon. But at least the Burrow was just a simple deleted post. In August of 2022, something way crazier happened. Multiple customers in New Zealand ordered the Lion Knights Castle set, but when they got their packages, they found the Hogwarts Express Collector's Edition set instead. This was a completely different set that hadn't been officially revealed by LEGO yet. Nobody outside of LEGO was supposed to know it even existed. A Reddit user named Legend of Tovan documented the entire unboxing, posting photos of the instructions, the stickers, everything. So this was a pretty big blunder on LEGO's part. But this isn't even the only time it's happened. It happened again in September of 2024. A Reddit user ordered the Burrow set, and with their purchase, they were supposed to get a gift set called Borgin and Burks. But when they got the package, LEGO had sent them Over the Moon with Pharrell Williams instead. This was an unreleased set that wasn't supposed to ship for months. LEGO contacted them and confirmed it was a warehouse mistake and sent them the correct gift instead. But the customer apparently kept the Pharrell set anyway, even though LEGO asked them to send it back. I can't tell if bro is a legend or a scammer. What do you think? Anyways, now let me tell you the story of how the return of Bionicle in 2015 got leaked 4 times before it actually happened. The first one was way back in December of 2013. Lego concept developer Asger Johansson updated his public LinkedIn profile. His description said he was developing the concept, story, and communication for a new Lego action figure theme launching in 2015. Now, his previous work included Hero Factory and Galaxy Squad, which were both action figure themes. So Lego fan sites immediately started connecting the dots and theorizing that this mystery theme could be Bionicle returning from cancellation. It was just a theory, but in fans' heads, it was 100% true. So what happened next? Well, in July of 2014, fans started noticing something really weird on Lego.com. If you went to the website and typed Bionicle into the search bar, it would redirect you to a coming soon page. But if you searched for other discontinued themes like Atlantis or Power Miners, you just got normal search results or nothing. This spread across the entire Lego community like wildfire. Lego noticed what was happening and quickly changed the search to show Hero Factory instead, trying to cover their tracks. But Brickset immediately called them out, saying that must mean they accidentally released that news too soon. But it gets even better. In September of 2014, Lego posted a teaser image on Google+, building hype for a mystery announcement. The image was cryptic and didn't show much. The whole point was to build hype around their announcement. But a Brickset commenter looked at the image URL and noticed something hilarious. The file name was Bionicle4new.jpg. The mystery announcement was supposed to be mysterious, and Lego just put the answer directly in the file name where everyone could see it. The fan wrote at the time that it kinda lessens the excitement just a tad bit, obviously being sarcastic. But the fourth leak happened 4 days before the official reveal, literally right before the finish line. Gadanui from BZ Power found a product image on the image cache servers for Lego's website. The image showed a golden mask that clearly belonged to a Bionicle character. The Brick fan covered it as a separate story, saying how this looked exactly like the thumbnail image that would be on Lego's product page once the sets actually launched. Along with this, people also found an animation file on the cache. Lego was actively building the Bionicle product page on their publicly accessible servers before making any announcement. The entire page was under construction in a place where anyone could find it if they knew where to look. Moving on from Bionicle though, this next one is one of the weirdest possible ways a set could leak. In August of 2021, YouTuber M&R Productions was looking at official screenshots for Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga video game. In one of the screenshots, there was an AT-AT that was way bigger and more detailed than any AT-AT set that existed at the time. This lined up with lots of rumors that Lego was working on a UCS AT-AT. The theory M&R came up with was that Lego had given the game developers at TT Games early access to the physical model so they could recreate it in the game. And then someone at Lego or TT Games used a screenshot with that set in the official marketing without realizing it would be a leak. The UCS AT-AT officially released in November of 2021, and it definitely looks a lot like the one in the Skywalker Saga. But this next one might be the single biggest Lego leak of all time. In 2012, Fast Company magazine published an article about Lego's headquarters in Denmark. The article had a picture of one of the design studios, which is a cool inside scoop. The only problem is that there were dozens of unreleased Star Wars prototype sets clearly visible in this picture. Collectors who analyzed the photo spotted what looked like UCS versions of the Hyena droid bomber, an FX medical droid, an Imperial probe droid, and there was even a red TIE interceptor. And none of these sets were ever officially announced. Some of them eventually got made years later, but most of them never saw the light of day. This was a way bigger inside scoop than what Fast Company probably planned on releasing, but the fans were definitely happy about it. But as wild as that leak was, let's go all the way back to when Lego started, because there's tons of weird history that most people have never heard of. Before LEGO figured out how to print designs directly onto plastic, they just slapped stickers on the torsos instead. The kids of that era absolutely hated them because after a few months, the stickers would peel off at the edges, collect dirt, and just look terrible. But now, collectors want these stickered torsos more than anything because they're so rare. Most of them got destroyed or the stickers fell off completely, so finding one in good condition is like finding treasure. But if you want to talk about cool printing details, let's talk about classic space sets. A lot of these sets from 1978 to 1987 had a brick with their set number printed right on the hull, like LL928 on the Galaxy Explorer from 1979. The LL stood for Legoland because space was originally part of the Legoland theme before it became its own thing. LEGO stopped doing this in 1987 when the new era started with Futuron and Blacktron. It's one of those details that makes classic space sets feel more authentic and connected. However, there's one part of classic space that might not be so authentic: the logo. That logo showing a spaceship circling a moon was directly inspired by the 1959 NASA seal. If you put them side by side, it's pretty obvious that LEGO took some inspiration from NASA. But before LEGO was making spaceships, they were making wooden toys, and the only reason they stopped is actually really sad. On February 4th, 1960, a massive warehouse fire destroyed LEGO's entire wooden toy inventory. Everything was gone in one night, so the leaders had a choice to make. Should they rebuild the wooden toy line that they'd been making since 1932, or go all in on plastic bricks? They decided to bet on the future, so they chose plastic, ending 28 years of wooden toy production. But here's the crazy part. Two of old Kirk Christensen's sons were so pissed off about this decision that they quit in protest and started their own competing toy companies. They saw it as abandoning the family legacy, but obviously, history proved that LEGO made the right call. Anyways, let's talk about why some vintage LEGO bricks don't even work anymore. LEGO's first bricks from 1949 to 1963 were made with cellulose acetate plastic, and over the decades, they got some seriously bad warping. If you have vintage bricks from that era and you try to connect them to modern bricks, there's a good chance they just won't fit properly because they've literally been out of shape over time. They also have this shinier finish compared to modern bricks, so it's pretty easy to tell if you're working with an old one. Eventually, LEGO switched to a plastic that I'm just gonna call ABS, but it wasn't all at once. First, LEGO Denmark switched to ABS plastic in 1963 because they realized cellulose acetate was complete garbage. But Samsonite, the luggage company that was making LEGO for North America at the time, continued using cellulose acetate until 1970 just to save money. That's 7 years where kids in an entire continent were getting objectively worse bricks than others. Imagine being a kid in America trying to build something cool and your bricks don't even fit properly because Samsonite decided to cut corners. And it's not like they didn't know ABS was better. They just didn't want to spend the money to upgrade their production. Another terrible decision involving Samsonite was one of the worst business deals in LEGO history. In 1961, LEGO signed a 99-year exclusive licensing deal, giving Samsonite all North American rights to manufacture and distribute LEGO products. In case you missed it, this deal was 99 years long. LEGO's own leadership later admitted it was a massive mistake, and they had to buy back the rights after just 11 years for way too much money. They did this in 1972, so for over a decade, LEGO was stuck watching Samsonite make low-quality products with their name on them, and there was legally nothing they could do about it. But here's something genuinely concerning about vintage LEGO that most people don't know. Testing has confirmed that LEGO bricks from the 1970s and 80s, particularly yellow and red ones, have cadmium in them, which is a known carcinogen. The levels detected are now illegal in both Denmark, where LEGO is headquartered, and Washington State. So here's the irony. Denmark has some of the strictest cadmium regulations in the world, but their most famous toy broke those regulations for years. Obviously, LEGO stopped using cadmium decades ago once they understood the risks. But if you have vintage yellow or red bricks from that era sitting in a bin somewhere, just be aware of what's in them. But let's move away from toxic bricks and talk about one of the weirdest sets LEGO's ever made. In 1974, the LEGO Family set had these giant figures with posable arms, but legs made out of bricks stacked on top of each other. They looked really bizarre and kinda creepy, but here's the part that everyone jokes about. The set included a mother, a father, a kid, and a grandmother, but there was no grandfather. So for decades, LEGO fans have been making jokes about what happened to Grandpa. Did he die? Did they get get divorced? Was he just not invited? Nobody knows, and LEGO never explained it. But despite the creepy design and the missing grandfather, it became one of the biggest sellers in the 70s. Demand was so insanely high that factory workers had to come in and work on public holidays just to keep up. Another weird fact about figures is that when minifigures launched in 1978, they all had the exact same face. 2 black dots for eyes and 1 simple smile. That's it. No eyebrows, no frowns, no angry faces, no variations whatsoever. And the craziest part is that it stayed this way for 11 years, all the way up to 1989. LEGO's philosophy was that kids should use their imagination to give the minifigures emotion, instead of the emotions being told to them with a frowny face or something. It was a bit of a weird philosophy considering how many faceplates we have now, but there's something really funny about these early minifigures. When they launched in 1978, every single male wore a hat, a space helmet, or some kind of head covering. Why? Because LEGO didn't know how to design hair pieces. They couldn't figure out how to make hair that looked good and fit properly on a minifigure's head, so every guy was either bald under his hat or just permanently wearing headgear. The first male hairpiece didn't come out until 1979, a full year after the minifigure's debut. So for an entire year, if you wanted a male minifigure with hair, you were out of luck. Oh, and about those faceplates, everything changed in 1989 when the Pirates theme came out. This was the first theme to give minifigures different facial expressions. It had eye patches, beards, makeup, scars, missing teeth, and it was also the first theme to introduce body part variations like hook hands and peg legs. Designer Jens Nygaard Knudsen said a real pirate captain must have a patch on his eye, a peg leg, and a hook. So they couldn't just keep using the default faceplate. But in 1977, back before minifigures were even released, the designers made prototype molds for them out of Lego bricks themselves. They'd stack bricks into a box shape, pour silicone inside, let it harden, then carefully cut it open with a knife to make working prototype molds. So the very first test minifigures were literally made using molds built from Lego bricks. But the story today is wildly different. Now Lego uses 8 different molds to produce every single minifigure. You'd think it'd be simpler, but 2 of those mold sets are identical duplicates that are just reversed. One for molding the right arm and right leg, and another for molding the left arm and left leg. They have to be separate because of how the injection molding process works, but the precision is so ridiculously exact that minifigures from 1978 can still connect perfectly with minifigures from 2025. That's 47 years of perfect compatibility maintained across 8 different molds. But there was a certain type of minifigure that LEGO refused to make for 10 years. The skeleton. Skeleton minifigures were designed all the way back in 1985, but when designers presented them, LEGO management told them no because they made a dead minifigure. They had no intention of ever releasing it, so the skeleton design just sat in a drawer for an entire decade. After years of debates about whether depicting death was appropriate for a kid's toy, skeletons finally showed up in 1995 in both Pirates and Castle sets at the same time. LEGO eventually got over their fear of showing death, and now skeleton minifigures are one of the most popular ones ever made. But before skeletons, the first non-human minifigure was actually a ghost in the castle theme. It was something completely new for multiple reasons. Obviously, it was a ghost, but that meant it didn't have legs. Instead, the torso attached to a 1x2 brick. But the coolest part? It was glow in the dark. Kids absolutely loved it because not only was it a completely new design, but it glowed in the dark, which was the coolest thing ever in 1990. Speaking of castle, there's a minifigure in this theme that made history in 1993. The blue wizard Magisto from the Dragon Knights theme was the very first LEGO minifigure to have his own name. Before Magisto, every minifigure was completely generic, just knight or astronaut or police officer. But Magisto was different. He had a name, a backstory, a personality, and he appeared in multiple castle sets as a recurring character. He was the beginning of LEGO creating actual named characters with identities instead of just generic placeholder names. So without him, I never would have been able to make my video about minifigures with hidden lore, and I love that video. Anyways, now let's talk about Legoland, because its opening was way more successful than anyone expected. When Legoland Billund opened on June 7th, 1968, LEGO thought it would get about 300,000 visitors at most in its first season, but everyone else in the company thought it was an insane overestimation. However, they hit that number in just a few months. By the end of the season, 625,000 people had visited, which was more than double what they thought the most amount of people would be. The park was built using 6 million Lego bricks and needed thousands of truckloads of soil to be brought in just to even out the land and be able to build everything. But the reason Legoland even opened in the first place is something you're not gonna believe. In the mid-1960s, about 20,000 people per year were showing up at the Lego factory in Billund uninvited, just wanting to see display models and watch how bricks were made. Godfred Christiansen was getting so annoyed by random factory visitors constantly disrupting production that he had Legoland built just to give them something else to look at. That way, when random people wanted to see Lego stuff, they could go there instead of interrupting production. Bro literally built the most famous theme park ever just to get people to go away. It's so insane. Anyways, let's get back to the space theme for a second, because 1987 was a massive turning point. You've probably heard people talk about space and classic space like they're two different things, and they definitely are, don't get me wrong. But what separates them, and when did it happen? Well, classic space ran from 1978 to 1987, and the change to space is defined by one singular piece: the visorless helmet. It's the most iconic helmet in Lego history, but in 1987, Lego introduced completely new helmets with movable clear visors for the Futuron theme, and that single helmet change marked the official end of the classic space era. Old classic space sets were still being sold through 1988, but they started incorporating new colors and designs, and when Space Police launched in 1989 to fight Blacktron, nearly every single Space Police set had a modular jail cell. And here's the best part: they came pre-stocked with Blacktron prisoner minifigures. The jail cells were designed to be interchangeable between all the different vehicles and bases, so kids could combine different sets and build their own massive prison fleet. It was one of the first times Lego really leaned into cross-set compatibility, where buying multiple sets gave you stuff that worked together. But the coolest space faction has to be M-Tron from 1990. It wasn't just aesthetically cool with its red, black, and neon green color scheme. The sets featured actual working magnets built into crane attachments that could physically pick up and transport small cargo containers. But for some reason, M-Tron was marketed completely differently depending on where you lived. In Europe, they were marketed as a rescue faction that saved people, while in America, they were marketed as a mining faction that extracted resources. They were the same exact sets, but they had completely different backstories depending on what side of the Atlantic you were on, which makes absolutely no sense. But as cool as all that vintage stuff is, did you know that there are myths about Lego that people have believed for decades, like that bricks are indestructible? Lego bricks are made from ABS plastic, which means they have a melting point of about 220 degrees Fahrenheit. So you could literally boil a pot of water, put bricks in it, and watch them melt, which you definitely shouldn't do. I also found this video of someone using a lighter on a minifigure, and if boiling water can melt it, a lighter definitely can. But there are other ways to destroy them that are way more common. Certain colors of Lego bricks are actually brittle and break easily. Reddish brown, dark brown, and dark red pieces from the 2010s have a major problem where they just snap in half for no reason. This became such a huge issue that the Lego group had to announce a quality fix for reddish brown pieces specifically. The problem was so widespread that people started avoiding sets with lots of brown pieces because they knew they would eventually break. Bionicle joints are also notorious for breaking. If you collected Bionicle back in the day, you probably have a box full of broken ball joints somewhere. And trans clear pieces crack all the time too, especially if you try to force them together too hard. So if anyone tells you that Lego bricks are indestructible, they're completely wrong. Myth busted. But even if your bricks don't break, they still won't last forever, which leads us to myth number 2, yellowing bricks. UV exposure from sunlight yellows and brittles ABS plastic over time, especially white and light gray bricks. If you leave a white Lego set on a windowsill for a few years, it'll turn yellow and become weaker. The plastic literally degrades from the UV radiation, and once it's yellowed, there's no way to fully reverse it unless you use bleach. There have been entire experiments where people sacrificed Lego bricks to science just to study how UV damage actually works. Some people have tried using hydrogen peroxide treatments to restore yellowed bricks, which does actually work if you soak them for long enough. But the internal damage is still there, even if the yellow color isn't. So the myth that Lego bricks last forever without degrading is completely false. Myth busted. On the topic of colors, a lot of people think Legos use the same color for their gray pieces since the very first ones, but that's also false. In 2004, Lego made a controversial decision to change from light gray and dark gray to light bluish gray and dark bluish gray. Adult fans of Lego absolutely hated this change, and they started calling the new gray Blay because it had a very noticeable blue tint to it. The reason Lego made this change was because the old gray was harder to photograph and looked inconsistent in marketing materials, but AFOLs were so upset about it that there are still debates in the community about whether the change was worth it or not. So are the grays still the same? Definitely not. Myth busted. But gray isn't the only color that's changed. Brown also changed in 2004, from old brown to reddish brown. This was part of a larger color palette update that Lego did to make their pieces more consistent across different production facilities. But the problem was that the formula for reddish brown wasn't as strong as the old brown formula. The new color was more brittle, which is why so many reddish brown pieces from the 2000s break so easily. Lego eventually acknowledged this problem and worked on improving the formula, but by then, millions of brittle brown pieces had already been sold. So not only did we bust another myth, but we got concrete proof for a different myth from earlier. Look at what my boy Sater said. Apparently the subscribe button changes color when you click it, so go try it out. Anyways, another huge myth is that Lego sets are more expensive now than they've ever been before. People complain about this constantly on forums and social media, saying Lego used to be affordable, and now it's ridiculously overpriced. But here's the truth. When you adjust for inflation, the price per piece has stayed between 10 and 12 cents for decades. Multiple studies have analyzed Lego pricing data going back to the 1970s, and the price per piece has been remarkably stable. The reason sets seem more expensive now is because they have way more pieces than they used to. A Lego set from the 1980s might have 200 pieces and cost 20 bucks, while a set from today might have 2,000 pieces and cost 200 bucks. The price per piece is the same, but the sets are just bigger and more detailed. Modern sets also have way more unique pieces, printed elements, and complex building techniques that make them feel more premium. So Lego hasn't actually gotten more expensive. The sets have just gotten more complex and ambitious. Myth busted. Myth number 6 is pretty crazy though. Lego didn't actually invent the interlocking brick. A British inventor named Hilary Fisher Page created them in 1939 for a company called Kittycraft. His self-locking building bricks had the same stud and tube system that Lego uses today. Lego saw these bricks, liked the design, and started making their own version. But here's the twist. Lego didn't officially buy the rights to the design until 1981, which was over 40 years after Kittycraft patented it. By that point, Lego had already crushed the competition, so they basically took someone else's patented design, improved it with better quality control and marketing, and made it way more popular. But the original idea wasn't theirs. Myth busted. A lot of people also think Lego has always made plastic toys, but that's false too. Lego started as a wooden toy company in 1932. Ole Kirk Christiansen was a carpenter in Denmark, and he made wooden ducks, cars, yo-yos, and other toys. The name Lego was chosen in 1934, but the company was still making wooden toys at that point, and they didn't start making plastic toys until 1947 when they bought a plastic injection molding machine. Even then, they were making both wooden and plastic toys for years, but in 1960, their wood factory burned down in a massive fire, and after that, they decided to focus entirely on plastic bricks. So for almost 30 years, Lego was primarily a wooden toy company, and plastic was just a side experiment. Myth busted. But even when they started making plastic bricks, they didn't use the same material as they do today. Lego started with cellulose acetate in 1949 when they first introduced the automatic binding bricks. But cellulose acetate had serious problems. It warped over time, it discolored easily, and it didn't hold its shape well at all. So in 1963, Lego moved on to ABS plastic, which is acrylonitrile butadiene styrene. Let's just call it ABS. ABS is much more stable, more durable, and holds color way better, but that doesn't mean they aren't looking for the next successor. Now they're testing sustainable materials like plant-based plastics and recycled ocean plastic to try and move away from petroleum-based ABS. So the myth that Lego has always used the same plastic since 1949 is false. Myth busted. Myth number 9 is that Lego only manufactures in Denmark. People assume everything is made in Billund because that's where the company was founded, but Lego actually has factories all over the world. They manufacture in Hungary, the Czech Republic, Mexico, China, Vietnam, and they're opening a new factory in Virginia in 2027. Lego went worldwide a while ago, so obviously this myth is busted. But finally, we have a myth that is true. Lego bricks from 1958 still work with modern-day bricks. In 1958, Lego patented the stud and tube coupling system, which is the design that makes Lego bricks lock together so securely. That same system is still used today, which means you have perfect compatibility across 67 years of Lego production. You can take a brick from 1958 and connect it to a brick from 2025, and it'll work perfectly. Now, don't get me wrong, Lego's made slight changes along the way, so the bricks won't feel as sturdy as connecting to modern-day bricks. But it'll still work, which is really cool. Myth confirmed. Speaking of compatibility, myth number 11 is that Duplo bricks and system bricks are compatible too, and this one is also true. Duplo was introduced in 1969 specifically for younger children, and it was designed to be exactly 2 times the dimensions of regular system bricks in every direction. Lego wanted families to be able to transition from Duplo to system as kids got older, and they wanted siblings of different ages to be able to play together. So Duplo studs fit perfectly onto system bricks, and system studs fit perfectly into Duplo bricks. Lego even released official instructions showing how to combine Duplo and system in the same build, so if Lego themselves are saying it, you know it's true. Myth confirmed. Alright, this next myth is that a single Lego brick can support an infinite amount of weight. People love repeating this because Lego bricks are incredibly strong for their size. But the BBC actually tested this in a controlled experiment, and a standard 2x2 brick fails at 432 kilograms, which is about 950 pounds. That's the equivalent of stacking 375,000 bricks on top of each other, or building a tower 2.17 miles tall before the bottom brick collapses. So Lego bricks are incredibly strong, but they're not indestructible. And to make sure, I ran over a 2x4 with my car, which weighs about 3,000 pounds. And, yeah, it definitely did not survive. Myth busted. Myth number 13 is that the UCS Millennium Falcon is the most expensive Lego set ever released. And for a long time, this was absolutely true. The Millennium Falcon retailed for $850 when it came out in 2017, and it was the most expensive set Lego had ever released. It held that title for years, and people assumed it would always be the most expensive set. But in 2025, the UCS Death Star was released for $1,000, making it the most expensive Lego set ever. So even though it happened pretty recently, this myth is technically busted. Along that same line, people think the biggest Lego set has the most pieces, but biggest is subjective. The UCS Death Star has 9,023 pieces and is over 2 feet tall and almost 3 feet wide, but the Titanic has 9,090 pieces, which is technically more. A set that's bigger than both of those, though, is the Eiffel Tower, which stands at almost 5 feet tall and uses over 10,000 pieces. The debate over what Lego set is the biggest is super subjective. Is it piece count, height, surface area, all 3 of them combined? Nobody can come to an agreement. So I guess this one is still a myth. Anyways, myth number 14 is only partially wrong. Most people know that Lego comes from the Danish phrase leg godt, which means play well. Ole Kirk Christiansen combined the first 2 letters of each word to create the name in 1934. But what a lot of people don't know is that Lego also means I assemble in Latin. This was a complete coincidence that the company found out years after they chose the name, but it's such a perfect fit that it almost feels intentional. So the myth that Lego means more than just play well is technically confirmed, but because Ole Kirk didn't do it on purpose, I can't give it to him. Myth busted. But myth number 15 is something that sounds completely fake, but is 100% real. Lego is the world's largest tire manufacturer. They produce between 306 to 400 million tires annually, which is more than every real tire company, like Bridgestone, Michelin, or Goodyear. Obviously, these are tiny tires for Lego vehicles and not real cars, but Guinness World Records officially recognizes Lego as the largest tire manufacturer in the world. So this is one of those facts that sounds completely fake, but is 100% real. Myth confirmed. Another myth is that Lego minifigures have always had yellow skin. For a long time, this was Lego's standard. Yellow was supposed to be a neutral skin tone that represented everyone equally, regardless of race. But in 2003 with the NBA sets and 2004 with licensed themes like Star Wars and Harry Potter, Lego started using skin tones for minifigures based on real people. And it turns out Lego Duplo had been using flesh-colored figures since 1983, way before system minifigures made the switch. But the myth that minifigures always had had yellow skin is technically true, since Duplo figures aren't minifigures. Myth confirmed. Myth number 17 is that Lego sets are only made for children. This might have been true decades ago when Lego was mainly a kids' toy company, but it's completely wrong now. Lego has an entire 18+ line specifically marketed toward adults, with complex builds, high piece counts, and premium price points. The AFOL market, which stands for Adult Fans of Lego, makes up about 25% of Lego's total revenue, which is a massive chunk of their business. Sets like the Colosseum, the Titanic, and the UCS Death Star are clearly not designed for kids. They're designed for adults who want complex, challenging builds that take days to complete. So Lego is very much an adult hobby now, not just a kid's toy. Myth busted. People also think Lego bricks work perfectly with every other brand of plastic bricks, but this is completely false. Lego's manufacturing process is unbelievably try-hard. They make their bricks accurate down to 0.002 millimeters, which is insanely precise for mass-produced plastic toys. Other brands like Mega Bloks or generic off-brand bricks don't have this same level of precision, so they never fit quite right. If the fit is too loose, your structure becomes unstable and falls apart really easily. If it's too tight, you can't separate the bricks without damaging them or hurting your fingers. So Lego bricks technically can connect to other brands because they use the same basic stud design, but they don't work nearly as well. Myth busted. Another myth is that Lego never recalls sets or discontinues pieces, but they've had 3 serious recalls in their career. The first one was the Lego Primo Ladybird Rattle in 1998, but apparently Lego got reports from parents that the holes in it became a vacuum and got stuck in kids' mouths. This is an obvious choking hazard, so it definitely had to go. The second one was the Lego Explore Super Truck from 2002. This one was aimed for kids that were a little older, but the problem with it was that the wheels were removable, and when you removed the wheels, the axles were super pointy, which is clearly not something you want your 3-year-old playing with. But the last recall was the Power Functions remote controller from 2009. This was made to control RC cars in the Power Functions theme, but Lego got 4 reports saying that it heated up after batteries were put in. Luckily, no one was hurt, but I guess it got hot enough that people were genuinely worried about it, so Lego had to get that one gone too. But Lego's biggest ongoing problem has nothing to do with safety. It's actually something that's been driving builders crazy. I'm talking about the complete takeover of stickers. This is everyone's least favorite part of a Lego set. You try your best to get it on straight, just like how it is in the instructions, but it's always just a little bit off. These things have gotten way more common in today's sets, but it wasn't always like this. Lego fans all over the internet talk about how it feels like there are way more stickers in sets than there ever used to be, but finding the actual evidence is pretty difficult. The best I got is this picture of a tile piece that I don't even know the name of, but it's a perfect example of what's been going on. Another element that's been phased out over the years are wires, but this one is probably for the best. These days, most of the motors are battery powered, but back in the day, they had to be hooked up to a power source just so they could run. They were mostly used in the Power Functions theme, and since it started back in 2008, it makes sense why Lego wasn't really making wireless stuff yet. A big change that was hiding right under our noses, though, was the disappearance of fabric capes. These things were in basically every set I wanted when I was a kid. Jedis wore capes, and so did superheroes, so I was putting these things on minifigures all the time back in the day. As of recently though, Lego's been starting to phase them out. A bunch of different minifigures have rubber capes now. There's Batman in the Harley Quinn and Mr. Freeze fight set, Magneto in the X-Men Mansion set, and Thor in the Thor vs. Surtur construction figure set. As cool as these pieces look, they kind of limit what Lego's able to do with them. Back in the 1990s, they introduced this multicolored dragon cape in the system theme, which looks sick, but if they tried to do this with the new rubber capes, I feel like it wouldn't look as good. I guess this update is kind of hit or miss, but this next one was an absolute downgrade, no doubt. Do you notice how there aren't really any shiny pieces in Lego anymore? There used to be a bunch of them, on lightsaber hilts, vintage crowns for the castle theme, and even on certain minifigures, but we just don't get them anymore. Luckily, there is an actual explanation for this one. Basically, because the paint Lego was using wasn't the best quality, it peeled off pretty fast. So at one point or another, they just started using a color called Metal Light Gray for silver, and a bunch of different ones for gold. They don't look anywhere near as good, and to be honest, I feel like Lego should have just found a better chrome paint to use. Am I spinning here? I feel like that definitely would have been the better move, but let me know what you think. Moving on from chrome pieces though, LEGO actually made a super small update to their bricks somewhat recently. After they patented the stud and tube coupling system in 1958, the bricks were much better at keeping themselves together. But looking at this brick today, something just seems off about it, right? Well, it's because they hadn't added the support beams to the tubes yet. This became very common around 2008, so it makes sense why when I look at bricks that don't have these beams, they almost look naked. LEGO doesn't just make tiny updates to pieces though, they do it to minifigures too. Back in the early 2000s, you could buy a magnetic minifigure that didn't have this giant brick podium underneath it. They made a few different sets, but the most popular one was the LEGO Batman set. But what was wrong with these minifigures? If they were so cool, why did they end up changing it? Well, the magnets were actually little pieces in the back of the minifigure's legs, and once parents of young kids found out about it, they weren't too happy. LEGO had to stop making magnetic minifigures this way because it was a choking hazard, which is honestly a shame. The seamless look these Batman minifigures have compared to the ones we have now is so much better. Depending on what you're looking at, sometimes the old LEGO really was just better. And a perfect example of that is what LEGO did to the box design for LEGO Castle. The castle theme always had a blue sky with clouds in the background on the box. It was a super nice design for the theme, and it was a surefire way to know that you were buying a castle set. LEGO Castle has actually been retired since 2016 now, but because of how famous it was, they turned it into a sub-theme of the Icon series in 2022. Now, I don't have any problems with the sets in this sub-theme. In fact, I think the Lion Knight's castle is one of the coolest LEGO castles ever, but every set in the Icons theme comes in a blacked out box. Now, they didn't do that for this set in particular, but if you're going to change the design on the box, why not give it the classic blue sky that everyone knows and loves? This change didn't really make sense to me, but LEGO fans had it way worse than this before 1990. This is gonna sound crazy, but LEGO didn't make the first brick separator until that year. So before then, if you had two 1x2 plate pieces stacked on top of each other, you were basically cooked. But even then, we didn't get the one we have now until 2011. For some reason, all they did was change the color a few different times over the years, then come out of nowhere with the orange one in 2011. If you were playing with LEGO before the 90s, you definitely would have noticed this update. So let me show you something I guarantee you haven't noticed. This is a transparent brick. Looks pretty good, right? Well, what if I told you that this is actually an old design, and that most of the transparent bricks these days look like this? Yeah, I know. This downgrade is up there with the chrome change. I mean, why would you want to make transparent bricks less transparent? Now, don't get me wrong, certain sets have bricks that are super see-through, but that's definitely not the case for all of them. I can't lie, I've been hating on LEGO pretty hard with these last few updates, so let me show you one that was actually one of the best moves they've ever made. Obviously, we all know how LEGO instructions work. You look at the page and it tells you what to do. But back in the day, this was definitely not the case. These are a couple pages of instructions for set 948 from 1978. I mean, this is basically a free-for-all. There are a few arrows pointing you in the right direction, but for the most part, you're completely on your own. This isn't even as bad as it gets, though. Let me show you the difference between the original Forest Men hideout set from 1988 versus the remastered one from 2022. These are a few pages from the 2022 version. Nothing out of the ordinary, of course. But look at the pages from the one from 1988. I mean, this is just crazy. The difference between page 2 and 4 is out of this world, and they barely even told you anything. Like I said, this update was 100% needed, so let's take a look at another one. This is a police officer minifigure from 1978, but I bet you already knew that. This guy looks old. There isn't a whole lot going on with this minifigure, so when you compare it to one of the police officers we have today, it's a night and day difference. I'd be super surprised if any of you missed this change over the years, but I had to throw it in here, because imagine LEGO released a minifigure with this amount of detail today. There'd be an entire mob outside their HQ. Something people should riot over, though, is LEGO taking away light-up bricks. Specifically, light-up lightsabers for LEGO Star Wars. I've been a LEGO Star Wars fan my whole life, and I completely missed this update. Back in the early 2000s, they released a special type of Star Wars minifigure. All you had to do was put a stud on the back of the hilt and push the head down. Then the lightsaber would come to life. I genuinely can't believe I missed something as cool as this, especially since I literally could have gotten some when I was a kid, but I guess it just goes to show how sneaky LEGO can be. Another element they added then slowly took away like this were Legoland pamphlets showing off their new sets. I'm not exactly sure when they started putting these in boxes, and honestly, I'm not even sure when they stopped. All I do know is that they did it before and they don't do it now. Pretty much every single one of these pamphlets is considered to be vintage Lego, which means they probably haven't done it since before the year 2000. These pamphlets had all sorts of cool looking promo for sets that were coming out soon. Like, look at this one I found on eBay. There's promo for sets from a bunch of different themes. Space, pirates, Technic, it's all the classics. This wasn't the only thing that was common with old boxes though. Lego also used to show off a bunch of different ways to build a set on the box. I'm not talking about a 3-in-1 set though, where the entire point is to build it one way, take it apart, and build it another way with the help of instructions. These builds were put there purely to spark the imagination. These days, it kind of feels like Lego only makes sets that are meant to be built once, then put on display. But back in the day, they were super dedicated to the play features, and wanted people to make all sorts of cool stuff with their bricks, no matter what the instructions said. We don't really see that too often these days, and I doubt they're ever bringing it back. But if there's anything that Lego was doing before that they might actually bring back one day, it's what I'm about to show you next. Back in the 90s, Lego collabed with Kellogg's, the cereal brand. And I'm not too sure what gets put in cereal boxes these days, but back in my day, there was always some cool toy or prize that you had a chance of winning. The only way to find out was to open the box and pray. And back in the 90s, you might have gotten lucky enough to see a polybag for a Toucan Sam set fall out. It wasn't just him though. You also had a chance of winning Tony the Tiger or the Keebler Man. All three of these sets are super uncommon now, and I wasn't even born when they were around. But this is something I could definitely see Lego coming back to. Something they're absolutely never doing again though is painting directly onto pieces instead of using a print. Let me show you what I mean. Not too long ago, it wasn't uncommon for Lego to use paint on certain pieces. They did this a lot with head accessories for minifigures, but the most obvious ones were the headdresses in the Lego Indians theme. This design is clearly painted on, not printed, and it's become so rare that a certain minifigure in Lego Star Wars is worth an insane amount of money, simply because the headpiece was painted. It's in the Cloud City set, which was already exclusive, so that definitely helps drive up the price. But I'm talking about the Boba Fett minifigure. The design on his helmet was painted on, instead of printed, like how most minifigures were in 2003. This is the only Boba Fett minifigure that has this design style, and because of it, it's worth over $2,000. And the set it's in is worth over $8,000. Like I said though, I don't think they're ever bringing this back. And another thing that's in the same boat are 32 by 32 base plates. At one point or another, Lego completely phased out adding base plates to their sets. And it's been like this for so long that I bet you didn't even know they did it in the first place. Literally the only theme that still has them is the modular buildings theme. And that's because if they didn't, the sets wouldn't be modular. From the 1970s to the 1990s, Lego was including these things in a bunch of different sets. It's in the police headquarters from 1979, the Shell service station from 1983, the airport set from 1985, and way more. It's been in 102 different sets in total, most of which were released in that 20-year period. So it's safe to say that if it's not modular, it's not getting one of these base plates. We can all agree that it'd be nice to have a few of these things laying around. But sometimes Lego makes something super sick, adds it to a few sets, then retires it for good. Back in 1993, they released the Imperial flagship set in the Pirates theme. And as cool as the ship is, I want to focus on just one singular piece. You see this compass right here? It might look like a regular printed compass piece, but it actually works. This was the first set to ever have this piece, but the thing is, only 9 other sets in Lego history have ever included this piece. The last ones being the Spaniard ship and the pirate battleship in 2001. This piece never got the love it deserved, and as cool as it is, I don't think it ever will. But as much as Lego has changed over the years, none of it would exist if Lego never switched from making wooden toys to plastic ones in 1949. Before this, Old Kirk had just been making wooden toys by hand, which at the time was what everyone wanted. He was 58 years old at the time, so a calming hobby like this was perfect for someone who had been working all their life, but still wanted to do something creative with their time. So if wooden toys were so popular, how and why did he make the switch from stuff like this to plastic bricks? Well, in 1946, he attended a demonstration of a plastic injection molding machine in Copenhagen, and was super impressed with it. So much so that he even invested in Denmark's first plastic molding machine, a British-made Windsor injector, which got to Billund in late 1947. So even though Old Kirk was a little old, he was no regular old man. He kept his ear to the ground and was extremely open to new things, which is probably the only reason Lego was ever able to take off in the first place. Imagine if he was just some angry old man who wanted nothing to do with the modern world. we never would have grown up with Lego Star Wars The Complete Saga, and Toys R Us would have been a lot emptier. But clearly, he was interested. And 1 year later, in 1947, he and his son Godfred would come across something that completely altered the course of Lego. They were able to get some samples of a British toy brick called self-locking building bricks. They were made by a man named Hilary Fisher Page, who owned his own toy company called Kittycraft. But once Old Kirk saw these bricks, he knew he had to get a horse in the race. Now, I'm not trying to say that he stole the brick idea from Page. A lot of companies were making plastic bricks at the time. There was Kittycraft, Mini Bricks, Build-O-Brick, American Bricks, Baco Building Bricks. You get the idea. There were a lot of them. Everyone was racing to make the best plastic bricks possible. And it just so happened that Lego was able to win. But honestly, they never should have been able to. These other companies had been patenting and releasing toy bricks since the 1930s and 40s, while Old Kirk was still messing around with a whittle and a block of wood. But to top it all off, Old Kirk was the only one in his family who actually believed in the product. Even after Lego started releasing sets in 1950, Godfred and his brothers were trying to convince their dad that wooden toys were the golden standard, and that there was no reason to dive headfirst into making plastic toys. To this, Old Kirk said, and I quote, "Have you no faith? If we get this right, we can sell these bricks all over the world." I don't know if this guy could see into the future or what, because he was absolutely right. He had an unsettling amount of faith that plastic toys were the future. Even though the sets at the time weren't selling very well, customer satisfaction was mediocre, and they were getting returns all the time. But Old Kirk didn't let it get to him, and kept pushing Lego through the mud. Let's rewind to 1949 though, so I can tell you the origin story of the first Lego brick. After Old Kirk and Godfred saw those samples in 1947, it took them 2 years to finally come out with bricks of their own, known as automatic binding bricks. And you won't believe what they named them after. They used the word automatic to pay homage to the automatic weapons that were used to liberate Europe in World War II. I swear, it's literally on the Lego website. They changed the name to Lego Merston later on, but I'll get to that in a little bit. I just needed you to know the story behind that decision. These automatic binding bricks were sold in nice boxes, but only made extremely small sets. Lego didn't have anywhere near the capital they needed to start expanding, for obvious reasons. So they started out with stuff like the gift packages and bags selling individual pieces. Like I said, they weren't selling very well, and the family was having some doubts. But by 1953, Godfred had a leading role in Lego, and this is when he decided to change the name from Automatic Binding Bricks to Lego Merston. That same year, he also started having the word Lego molded on every stud on every brick. So at some point between 1949 and 1953, Godfred started to see the vision. He wasn't done though. He wanted to make his father's dream of selling these bricks all over the world come true. So he got a licensing deal with a Norwegian company that allowed them to produce Lego locally. This was their first step into the international market, and by the mid-1950s, they were already selling sets to neighboring Nordic countries. Things were starting to look really good for Lego, but there was one problem that they'd been ignoring for quite some time. The reason customer satisfaction was mediocre was because one of the biggest complaints was that the bricks didn't stay together very well. At this point, Lego's entire brand was built around bricks, and yet they had been making and selling a version that wasn't the best quality. It took another 5 years, but in 1958, they finally decided that enough was enough. In January of that year, Godfred had a meeting with a man named Axel Thompson, who was the head of Lego sales in Germany. The goal of this meeting was to sit down, put their heads together, and come up with a new system that was easy to implement and completely fix the problem they were having. This was when Godfred had a revolutionary idea that was critical for Lego to grow. His idea was to add 2 internal tubes on the inside of the bricks and connect the studs on top of every brick into these tubes. The head of the mold shop, Ove Nielsen, made a prototype within a day, but to Godfred's surprise, it just wasn't good enough. He went on a trip to Copenhagen to talk to patent lawyers, and during this trip, he finally got the perfect idea. Instead of having 2 tubes on a 2x4 brick, he'd have 3. That way, the studs can slip in between the tubes and have even more friction than they did before. He ran to Ove as soon as he was back, got a prototype, and on January 28, 1958, officially patented the stud and tube coupling system for toy building bricks. A lot of people consider this to be Lego's birthday, since this is the design they've been using all this time, and unfortunately, Old Kirk never got to see just how successful this idea would become. He died of a heart attack in March of 1958, but his dream lived on. Now, you'd think this would be the end of the story of the brick, but there was a lot more work left to do. They had this new brick that they knew would revolutionize plastic toys. But that's the thing, they were the only ones who knew about it. The coming years would be all about expansion and perfecting the brick as much as humanly possible, and it started with the packaging. In 1958 and 1959, LEGO was making catalogs and adding diagrams to boxes showing off their new innovation. It was the easiest way to tell people how much better LEGO bricks had gotten without making them buy anything. With these new bricks, sets started flying off the shelves, and an idea that Godfrey had in 1955 was finally starting to see some success: the LEGO System in Play theme. This is quite literally the first theme LEGO ever made. Some people might tell you that Merston was a theme, but that's just what it's considered now, not what it was back then. Godfrey had launched this project with no real way to make it successful, but now that the bricks were way better quality, the sets were finally starting to sell. It was at this point that LEGO finally decided that wooden toys were a thing of the past. Up until 1960, they actually still had a wooden toys department. Godfrey was running the plastic side, and his brothers all had different roles in the wooden side. The thing is though, right after they made this decision, a warehouse that had all of the leftover inventory of wooden toys burned to the ground, which, if you ask me, was a clear sign that Godfrey had made the right decision. From here, it was time to expand. In 1961, LEGO made a deal with Samsonite to start selling LEGO in the United States and Canada, and by the mid-1960s, you could buy LEGO all across Europe, North America, and farther. This deal was crucial for LEGO, because if they were stuck selling in Denmark, they never would have been able to get to where they are today. At this point, they were selling tens of millions of bricks every year, so with the money, they wanted to improve the brick even more than they already did in 1958. In 1963, they changed the material that the bricks were made of. Up until then, they'd been using a certain type of plastic called cellulose acetate. It was great for where they were at before, but it lost its color pretty fast, warped a little too easily, and overall just wasn't going to cut it anymore. The new material they switched to was called acrylonitrile. You know what, let's just call it ABS for short, and it was an absolute success. This type of plastic held its color for way longer and took a lot more time to warp. But there was another upside that they didn't even realize they'd get. Because of how much better the material was, it made their moldings accurate to 1/200th of a millimeter, which is basically perfect. With this, the design from 1958 could truly flourish. It was already perfect, but with the new mold accuracy, it was even better. Everything was going super well, but a super big problem that comes with expanding like this is quality control. However, Godfrey was a step ahead. A few years back in 1961, he hired Hans Scheiss, a Swiss plastic expert, to help with the material, which is probably why LEGO made that huge switch in 1963. Godfrey also put together an entire team dedicated to quality control. The only job for people in this department was to inspect and test every product LEGO planned on putting out, so they could be absolutely positive that it was worthy of being put on the shelves. This was probably one of the best moves they could have possibly made. Because of this team, LEGO's manufacturing error rate was only 13 defective parts per million. In other words, only 0.0013% of the parts LEGO made were defective. They were truly chasing perfection, and with these three moves, the new material, Hans Scheiss, the quality control department, LEGO made sure that their toys felt premium. They wanted their stuff to be a cut above the rest, and it absolutely was. The craziest part about all of this is that they hadn't even really taken off yet. The space theme, the pirates theme, minifigures, all of this wouldn't come out until 1978, and yet LEGO was still making moves like they were a billion-dollar company. The 2x4 brick is literally the only reason LEGO was able to become as successful as they are today, so it's only right that you know the story of how it came to be. But how did LEGO expand beyond the brick? Obviously, we know that we have way more pieces than that now, but where did they start? Well, the biggest milestone would have to be 1962, when they started making tires. LEGO cars are some of the most successful sets ever, and they started making them way back in the 60s. So of course they were going to need tires to put on the cars. Another huge milestone was the first set with a 4.5 volt motor. It's supposed to be a set of a little train, but because they didn't have that many pieces to work with, it didn't really end up looking like one. After this, though, came LEGO Duplo in 1969. This theme was made specifically for toddlers, so instead of the bricks you'd usually see in a LEGO set, they made giant ones to not only avoid choking hazards, but also because a toddler's brain might have a little trouble with regular-sized bricks. This was LEGO's last big move in the 1960s, but the 1970s just might be the most monumental decade for LEGO ever, and it's all because of one year. 1978. In the early and mid-70s, LEGO was actually starting to struggle a little bit. They'd been making a lot of the same stuff for over 20 years, and people were just starting to get bored. They needed something new, but something that still felt like Lego. 1978 was not only the birth of minifigures, but it was also the birth of the town theme, the pirates theme, the space theme, and the castle theme. Literally all 5 of these went on to be some of the most popular stuff Lego's ever made. I mean, one of the most expensive Lego sets is quite literally the first castle in the castle theme. I'm not going to go too far into this stuff, so if you want to learn about it, go watch my video on the evolution of Lego sets. But Lego's story doesn't just live inside stores and sets, because sometimes it ends up in the last place you'd ever expect. Have you ever been at the beach and seen a random Lego piece washed up on shore? Well, as random as it may seem, you're actually not alone. Back in 1997, a cargo ship called the Tokyo Express was hit by a massive wave around England, and a few shipping containers fell off of it. Well, one of these containers actually had 5 million Lego pieces inside of it, and funnily enough, they were all made for underwater themes, like Aqua Raiders and Pirates. It's extremely common to find Lego pieces on the beach of the UK, so if you've ever been there and found one, now you know why. The next mystery, though, actually ties into this huge spill. Out of the 5 million pieces that were lost at sea, less than 10% have been found by humans. The thing is, though, there's one type of piece that was in the container that no one's been able to find. Until now. The piece I'm talking about is a Lego shark, and out of the 5 million, 51,800 of them were shark pieces. Just last year, a fisherman named Richard West found one in his fishing net, officially making him the first person to find a shark piece from the 1997 spill. Why did it take almost 30 years for someone to find a shark, though? Wouldn't they have just washed up like every other piece? Well, not exactly. Because of the size and shape, the shark pieces sink underwater. So the only reason West was even able to find one was because he's a fisherman. Pretty crazy. The biggest mystery of all, though, is why you haven't subscribed to my channel yet. I upload Lego videos just like this one every week, so go subscribe to my channel. Anyways, the next mystery I want to tell you about has to do with minifigures. If you've seen a minifigure with a random person's name on it, you might have been a little confused, which makes a lot of sense. I mean, why would a real minifigure from Lego have something like this? Well, these are actually business cards for Lego employees. I know it sounds crazy, but it's actually true. Instead of the traditional business cards that everyone else has, certain Lego employees have a minifigure with their name on the front and contact information on the back. At least, they used to. As of late last year, Lego is officially reserving them for the family. In other words, if your last name isn't Christensen, then you won't be getting a minifigure business card ever. I'm not entirely sure why Lego decided to do this, but maybe it has something to do with how much they sell for on eBay. Yeesh. Unfortunately for Lego, they can't control everything about minifigures, especially the giant ones that have been washing up on beaches since 2007. After all these years, only 6 of them have popped up, but they were quite literally all over the world. The first one was in Zandvoort, Netherlands in 2007. The second one was in 2008 at Brighton, UK. The third one was in 2011 at Siesta Key Beach in Florida. The fourth one was in 2012, and it was actually the second one to wash up in Brighton. The fifth one was in 2014 at Uegahama Beach in Japan, and the most recent one was in 2015 at Topanga Beach in California. Now, considering these minifigs are 8 feet tall and completely made of fiberglass, it's no wonder why there aren't too many of them. So what's the mystery here? Well, isn't it obvious? Who in the world is making these minifigures, and how are they making them wash up on beaches all over the world? Well, after all these years, we finally have an answer. The only hint we had was that the words Ego Leonard were printed somewhere on every single one. They also have weird messages on the front of them, but Ego Leonard are the only words that are on all of them. After all this time, we finally know that Ego Leonard was a guerrilla art project by Leon Kier, a Dutch artist known for his street art and optical illusions. But not every Lego mystery is so innocent. For this one, I'm gonna have to take you to Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga. But be warned, this mystery is pretty disturbing. In Mos Espa, you can find a silver protocol droid carrying a kyber brick into a house. Once you follow the droid inside, you get this super weird cutscene where he just stares at you with creepy music playing in the background. Then he runs into a room and vanishes. This is for sure a little weird, but this is where the creepy stuff comes in. This protocol droid's name is actually Nobot, and he has a seriously dark backstory. Apparently, he's been wandering around Mos Espa for decades, but no one actually knows why he's there. He even ventures off into the heart of the desert, but no matter what, he always ends up back in Mos Espa. Espa. According to Jira, one of the vendors we saw in The Phantom Menace, decades ago, Nobot was the only surviving witness to the murder of a pregnant woman, and he was covered in blaster fire and blood. Even worse than this was the fact that his communications module was known to play back the recording of this woman dying. Allegedly. There's no proof of it, but people are pretty convinced this droid committed the murder, and since he was left without a purpose, he just wanders around Mos Espa, aimlessly. Like I said, this mystery is anything but peachy, but to bring it all together, LEGO named the side mission where you find him Ghost Protocol. This is by far the creepiest mystery I found for this video, but there's something about creepy LEGO mysteries that's just so interesting. So let me tell you about one more. This one is about the legend of the Whispering Brick, and while it definitely isn't well known, if you look hard enough, you can find people talking about it. It's basically an urban legend in LEGO, but the story is that sometimes builders are able to hear a faint whisper coming from one of their bricks. It never says any definitive words, kind of like when Harry was hearing whispers in Harry Potter, but according to a few people, it was 100% coming from the direction their bricks were in. Now, if I'm being honest, there's no way this is real. I mean, it just seems like a creepypasta that trolls tried to get other people to believe. But regardless, it's still a weird mystery in LEGO, if you want to call it that. Moving on from the creepy stuff, there's actually a big mystery surrounding one of the most famous minifigures of all time, Mr. Gold. We all know who Mr. Gold is, but if you thought the mystery had to do with why LEGO decided to make him, or where they got all the gold from, you're completely wrong. It's actually that most of them are missing. LEGO made 5,000 of them in total, but with how many fake ones there are on the market, there was no way for anybody to keep track of where the real ones ended up. With a number as low as 5,000, and the fact that you could only get him in a minifigure Series 10 bag at random, you'd think that everyone that got one would post about it online, but that's not the case at all. Like I said before, because of how many fakes there are, it's impossible to know who actually has a real one. But to make it even more difficult, this minifigure came out all the way back in 2013. So tracking down all of those original posts would be insanely difficult. Obviously, this mystery is 100% unsolved, but it's actually a perfect segue into the next one, because it has to do with lost media. If you've never heard this term before, it's basically just something digital that no one is able to find. Knowing that, your next question might be, well, Minifigured, LEGO makes toys, so how would they have any sort of lost media? And to that, I would say that you'd be right, if it wasn't for the fact that LEGO's made a ton of TV shows over the years. Obviously, we have shows like Bionicle and Shima, but one that's been lost for a super long time is the LEGO Adventurers show from 1998. It aired on Cartoon Network on March 23rd, 1998, but it was only shown in Europe. On top of this, according to someone on Reddit who actually watched the show, each episode was only about 1 minute long, and they were shown in between other shows, so it wasn't really a full-blown cartoon. The only evidence we have that it even exists is a small advertisement on a page from the LEGO Club magazine for March and April of 1998, and a super low-quality 30-second commercial advertising the show. So there's no evidence of the actual show, just ads for it. TV shows aren't the only thing that's been lost over the years, though. There's also tons of mobile games that have been completely wiped from the App Store. About a year ago, someone on TikTok uploaded a few videos of them recording their old phone, and they had a ton of these extinct apps. I guess they just never updated their phone, because that's literally the only way they could still have these apps on there. Now, technically speaking, none of them are actually lost media, but it's still really cool to see LEGO games that aren't available anymore, just sitting on someone's phone. Let's move on from lost media though, so I can tell you about the time that LEGO helped solve a mystery in real life. I have to give another warning here though. This one is much darker than the Nobot mystery. Back in 1991, Lucille Johnson was found murdered in her house in Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm not exactly sure why, but the police back then were never able to find out who killed her, so her case went cold for years and was eventually closed. One of the only details I'm comfortable saying is that LEGO pieces were found at the door to the house, the living room, and in the driveway, and it would turn out that these pieces are what allowed the police to find the person responsible years later. In 2013, they finally had the technology they needed to inspect the pieces properly, and this is how they cracked the case wide open. The police tested some DNA from the crime scene, and it matched to a man named John Sansing, who was actually already in prison for murder in Arizona. Further analysis revealed that the fingerprints on the LEGO bricks matched his son, who was 5 years old at the time. With this, the police were easily able to link Sansing to the murder, and they were pretty sure he used his son to get inside the house in the first place. Like I said, this story is very dark, but isn't it crazy that the only reason it got solved was because of fingerprints on a Lego brick? This is by far the craziest story I found for this video, but let's get back to mysteries that stay within Lego. The next one I want to talk about is the mystery of the lighthouse rowboat, and it may not seem like much, but this one has been stumping fans for ages. Back in 2022, Lego released this motorized lighthouse set, and it's actually a really sick set, but that's not what I'm here to talk about. What I and everyone else are wondering is why the back of the rowboat has the word Lita on it. It has absolutely no significance in the set, and the weird part is that this set is in Lego Ideas, but the designer never gave any information on the name. In fact, the only significance it has is in Greek mythology. Lita was an Aetolian princess who later became a Spartan queen, but this is a lighthouse set, so there are no demigods or any other mythological creatures to be found. If there's one thing about Lego fans, it's that they love to know every little detail, but unfortunately, this is one they're just gonna have to forget about. Moving on from that though, the next mystery I want to tell you about honestly shouldn't even be considered a mystery anymore. The Lego Vault. A long time ago, there were rumors floating around that Lego had a secret vault where they have one of every Lego product ever made stored inside, released and unreleased. Fast forward years later, and there are tons of videos on YouTube of people literally showing the inside of the vault. It used to be in a different spot, but now it's part of the Lego Inside Tour. Someone on Reddit showed what the inside of the new one looked like, noting how it's not in a bunker anymore. But if this isn't enough to convince you that the vault is real, then this next thing definitely will be. For 2024's Inside Tour, the set Lego gave to attendees was a set of the vault itself, called Memory Lane. I mean, come on, at this point, there's literally no arguing it. The Lego Vault mystery has officially been solved, and honestly, it has been for a super long time. But something I absolutely have to touch on is the history of Easter eggs in Lego. We all know that the first Lego set was made in the 1950s, but it wasn't until 1989 when Lego finally made their first Easter egg. This tile piece was released along with the original Pirates theme in 1989. It's just a simple treasure map, but after looking at it, fans came to two conclusions. There's not only a hidden skull here, but there's also a hidden whale too. If I'm being honest though, I only see the whale. This treasure map having a hidden skull in it is famously hard to see, so not everyone agrees that it's even there. But there's no argument for the whale. That little island on the left definitely looks like one. Now, obviously, Lego has come a long way since this first Easter egg, and honestly, this is more of a reference than anything else. But if I'm going to tell you about the history of Lego Easter eggs, I have to start at the beginning and work my way up. So let me take you to 2001 with the Lego Harry Potter Hogwarts Classroom set. This was super early on in Lego Harry Potter's lifetime, so it's super small, leaving the Easter egg right in front of your face. For some reason, Lego decided to include the Mirror of Arise in this Hogwarts classroom, and looking at it, we can see Harry and his parents in the mirror. This is a direct reference to the Sorcerer's Stone, when Harry did this exact thing. However, the movie came out way after this Lego set, so the designer did this completely from their imagination. Okay, this next Easter egg is a little bit different. There's a rumor that you can't subscribe to this channel in 3 seconds or less. I'm gonna start a timer. Let's see if you can do it. Ready? Go! Did you get it? I hope so, because it's time for the next Easter egg. As it stands, 2001 wasn't the worst year for Lego Easter eggs. Like, there was a pretty cool one in the Lego Alpha Team theme. This theme was based on the video game that came out first, and centers around a team of secret agents stopping the villain Ojal. Notice anything about that villain's name? Well, in case you missed it, it's actually Lego spelled backwards. I think we can all agree that this is somewhat cool, but it's still pretty small in the grand scheme. So let's move up a year to 2002, when Lego dropped an Easter egg that was 22 years in the making. It all started in April 2002, with the Lego Star Wars Republic gunship. This set came with 8 minifigures, but the star of the show here is the Jedi Knight. See, this guy right here doesn't actually exist in the Star Wars universe, so when the set was originally released, he was just named Jedi Knight. 7 years later though, the Lego Star Wars Visual Dictionary dropped, and this random Jedi Knight was officially named Jedi Bob. Now, this is already enough to be a super sick Easter egg, but just wait, it gets better. In 2024, Lego dropped the Jedi Bob Starfighter, officially welcoming him into the Lego Star Wars franchise. Now, I know know this one technically isn't from the year 2002, but it was just way too good to leave until the end of the video. You see, the thing about Lego Easter eggs is that most of them are in sets that are attached to movies like Star Wars, but not all of them are technically correct or done properly, like this TIE bomber from 2003. For any die-hard Star Wars fans watching this, you noticed as fast as I did. Why in the world is this TIE bomber blue? Well, according to the Lego community, all TIE ships were originally supposed to be this sort of blue-gray color in the Star Wars movies, but because of technological limitations back then, they had to be a light gray in A New Hope. But this TIE bomber set came out 26 years after A New Hope, so whoever designed this TIE bomber had some crazy inside information. Speaking of Lego designers, we all know that they love to put Easter eggs about themselves in their sets. Well, the earliest and most subtle version of that I could find was in the Sentai Fortress set from 2006. The person who designed this set was Japanese, so for their Easter egg, they added some stickers to the set with Japanese lettering on them, thanking the designer of the set, which is of course them. Stickers are one of the easiest ways for Lego to add subtle Easter eggs to their sets, and a super niche one can be found in the Hyperspeed Pursuit set from 2009. This set is from Space Police 3, which is a sub-theme of Lego Space. On the back left part of the ship, there's a sticker that says, "I heart insectoids," and this is actually a reference to the Insectoids line, another sub-theme of Lego Space that hasn't been around since 1999. Lego absolutely loves to reference themselves in themes they've made, and it's even done in sets from Lego Ideas. In the Lego DeLorean set from 2013, there are two dates listed on the console of the car. One of them is your destination time, and the other is your present time, and the date in red is actually super important in Lego history. Like, we literally wouldn't have Lego without it. This is the day that Lego officially got the iconic brick design patented. Now, even though these two dates aren't technically accurate to the DeLorean from the movies, Lego definitely made up for it with this Easter egg. But let's move on to the year 2014 with the Rescue Reinforcements set. This set is from the GOAT of Lego themes, the Lego Movie, and the Easter eggs in here are actually callbacks to old themes, just like the Insectoids Easter egg. This set comes with 5 minifigures, but there are 2 in particular I want you to look at. The girl minifigure is wearing a shirt from Fabuland, and the guy minifigure is wearing a shirt with the Blacktron logo on it. Fabuland is a pretty old Lego theme that ran from 1979 to 1989 and was the first Lego theme to revolve around a story. And Blacktron was the name of the villain group in the original Lego Space theme, so both of these minifigures are callbacks in and of themselves. Now, I definitely like these Easter eggs, but Lego kicked it up a notch with this next one. This is the Parisian artwork set, and you won't believe how cool the Easter egg is here. This set is part of the modular buildings theme, so there are honestly a ton of Easter eggs to choose from here, but I want to focus on the 3rd floor. In the Lego universe, an artist is said to live up here, and if we take a look at her paintings, they seem oddly familiar. Well, they're actually a nod to the original color palette that Lego used back in the day. This color palette was inspired by Piet Mondrian's art, making this Easter egg somewhat of a double whammy. Everyone loves a good 2-for-1 Easter egg, so let me show you another one. In the Scooby-Doo Mummy Mystery set from 2015, there's a huge Lego reference hiding perfectly in plain sight. The thing is though, it's referencing a pretty old theme, so the target audience for this set definitely missed it. On the right pillar, there's a picture of Johnny Thunder, the main character from the Lego Adventurers theme. This theme ran from 1998 to 2003, and Johnny explored a lot of different places in that time, but the one we care about right now is Egypt. There are 25 sets under the Egypt theme of adventure, so Johnny was there pretty often, and I guess one of those times he ended up in a mummy museum and left a souvenir. It's always fun when Lego bridges 2 completely separate universes like this, but it's even better when they do it with movies. In the Ghostbusters Firehouse set, there are a million different Easter eggs all over the place, but there's one 2x2 tile piece in here that just screams Lego. The piece's technical name is 3068BPB0950, and it's actually a reference to Time magazine. In the first Ghostbusters movie from 1984, the team was on the cover of Time once their business started taking off. They were called a supernatural success story, but since Lego probably didn't want to get in any legal trouble, they replaced the Time logo with the word brick and wrote Ghostbusters on the cover instead. Lego slipped in a lot of sneaky secrets with these tile pieces, but one of the craziest ones was this map piece in the Treehouse Adventure set from 2017. Now, technically speaking, this piece has been in 29 different sets, but I just talked about one from 2017 to keep the timeline in order. Now, knowing this, you'd think it'd just be some random map that Lego keeps reusing to save time and money. But this map has an origin you won't believe. This piece debuted in 2008 in the Indiana Jones motorcycle chase set. And at first, people just thought it was a random map. But after they took a closer look, they realized that this is the same map that was used to find the Holy Grail in Indiana Jones: The Last Crusade. So basically, Lego's just been using an Indiana Jones map in random sets since 2008, which I think is pretty funny. This is a super niche Easter egg that took people quite a while to put together, but this next one literally never would have been found out if it weren't for the die-hard fans. In 2018, LEGO released the LEGO Batman Movie Series 2 minifigures pack, and it came with a ton of different minifigures from the DC universe. But funnily enough, the Easter egg here isn't even with the minifigures. A lot of them came with pieces to go along with them, and the piece that came with Apache Chief is quite interesting. It seems like the Chief was taking pictures in a photo booth with a monkey and got scared. Well, those die-hard fans I mentioned before took one look at this and put it together immediately. There's a high chance that this monkey is actually Gleek, a sidekick of the Wonder Twins. The Chief fought alongside these twins pretty often, so odds are pretty high that this monkey really is Gleek. Okay, we've gotten pretty far in LEGO's Easter egg history, so for this next one, I want to show you guys a true milestone in their journey. This is the LEGO Nintendo Entertainment System set, and if you know anything about LEGO Easter eggs, then you definitely know where I'm going with this. Obviously, this set is already super cool in general, but if you take off the back panel, it reveals an oddly familiar looking setup. This hidden part is actually the end of level 1-2 in the original Super Mario Bros. Game. It's one of the most popular Easter eggs in LEGO history, and while it's definitely one of the coolest, this next one might just be better. In the Boutique Hotel set, there's a piece of art on the wall in the lobby that, just like the Mario level, looks oddly familiar. The Boutique Hotel is part of the modular buildings theme, and if we've learned anything about LEGO so far, it's that they love to make references about other sets in the same theme. Well, this artwork is actually made by the same artist who lives on the 3rd floor of the Parisian restaurant. And how do I know this? Well, LEGO actually tells you directly in the instructions for the set. I don't know about you, but I absolutely love it when LEGO brings Easter eggs full circle like this, and keeps them alive. It's why Easter eggs like the Jedi Bob set and the Johnny Thunder cameo in Scooby-Doo are so cool to me. It really just shows how dedicated they are. This Boutique Hotel set dropped in 2022, so to finish off the history lesson, let me tell you about the Legend of Zelda Deku Tree set, which dropped just last year in 2024. Now, since this set is based on a video game, there are a ton of different Easter eggs to choose from, so I'll keep it short and only mention a few. For starters, this set can be built in 2 different ways, and if you want to find these Easter eggs, you'll need to build the version with green leaves instead of pink. If you take off a piece on the right side of the tree, you'll see a few yellow pieces steadily going up, almost like a staircase, or in this case, music notes. These yellow pieces are actually the sheet music for Saria's song, which is played on an instrument called the ocarina. Now, since this tree is symmetrical, there's also an Easter egg on the right. This side has a bow and arrow along with a red, blue, and yellow piece sitting on top of it. Well, these actually represent the fairy bow and the fire, ice, and light arrows which you can unlock in the game. But Easter eggs are only a small part of the story, because before any of this was even possible, LEGO had to start somewhere, and the beginning is way more interesting than you'd think. Let's start with the first set LEGO ever released, Set 236, Garage with Automatic Door. This set was a part of a theme called LEGO Town Plan, first introduced all the way back in 1956. It had a whopping 59 pieces, and look how simple it is. It features just a white base, a door frame, and of course, the garage door, which, by the way, wasn't even motorized. And to top it off, this set didn't even include a car, but its counterpart, Set 236-2, did include what we know as the very first LEGO car, a 1:87 scale Volkswagen red bus. While the first LEGO car really is quite impressive, keep in mind that they look like this. Not really anything similar to what we know today. However, that all changed in 1962. Here is one of the first sets with real rubber wheels and a studded wheel plate. Now that's much more like it. This was a huge step in LEGO's evolution, because when I think about LEGO sets, some of the most memorable sets and themes ever are vehicles that couldn't exist without this. 1962 was a milestone year for LEGO, but it's for a much weirder reason than you may think. Once they started making these rubber wheels for their sets, LEGO actually started to become the largest tire manufacturer in the world. And while this is much bigger than this, I guess they're kind of still the same thing, right? With rapid innovations like this wheel, LEGO opened the floodgates, improving with each release from then on. Next, we're going to jump forward a little bit in time to the great year of 1965. During this year, the most important thing going on wasn't the space race, and it certainly wasn't the infamous Flintstones cartoon. No, it was the release of the 001 Gears set. This set could arguably be considered the father, or should I say grandfather, of the LEGO Technic theme. The set only featured 43 pieces. However, it's the details that made the set so special. It sold for about $5 back then, which in today's money would be a little under $50. The interconnected gears and wheels made this set one of the most technical sets LEGO had released at the time, although the standard wasn't that high back then. That would all change though in 1978, when Kjeld Kirk Christiansen had a genius idea that marked a new era for LEGO. Kjeld called this idea the system within a system. and what this really meant was that LEGO was kicking it into high gear. First up was the LEGO space theme. It was an instant hit. The space race was the talk of the town, so this was the perfect opportunity for LEGO to make a move. The first set released under this theme was the LEGO Space Cruiser. This set was a clear step up from anything the world had seen from LEGO in years prior. There was a brand new logo slapped right onto the front of the ship, marking this set as part of the space theme. Along with this, there were some new minifigures too. The set featured 2 white astronaut minifigures and me. No wonder it did so well. After this, LEGO continued to make groundbreaking sets, the likes of which we'd never seen, like this Viking Line Ferry Viking Saga set released in 1982. This set was one of the very early collaboration sets released by LEGO. It was released as a promotional set for the company Viking Line Ferries and is one of only 5 sets that have been made under the company's name. The set is only 207 pieces and doesn't come with any minifigures, but the look of the boat is super clean. The contrast of the bright red and blue bricks on solid white is a really good look, and to be honest, this boat looks like it might even be able to float on its own. I'm not sure if LEGO was trying to make flamboyant boats or not, but regardless, this one looks pretty cool. After a while though, fans were starting to get a little bored. Even though LEGO was definitely upping the ante just about every year, people wanted more. So LEGO thought to themselves and asked, what can we do to spice up our upcoming sets and give fans what they're looking for? Well, they landed on an answer, and that answer was minifigures. All this time, minifigures had the same face in every set, just a simple little smile. And while that's all well and good, I can see how it would be boring after a while. With that in mind, LEGO made one of the most impactful decisions of their entire career. I introduced to you the Black Seas Barracuda pirate ship. Released in 1989, this is the first LEGO set to introduce minifigures with different faceplates. While it's not anything crazy by today's standards, back then this was monumental. Finally, the fans got something new, and the best part was that this innovation had an endless amount of possibilities. Faceplates are a super important part of both minifigures and LEGO sets today, so this step up truly was a turning point. Unfortunately though, soon after this wonderful idea, LEGO made a very big mistake. The success of LEGO wasn't just a straight line up to the sky. They had ups and downs just like anything else that succeeds in the business world, but this one was a little drastic. In 1992, for some odd reason, LEGO decided to fire a bunch of the designers who made the sets from the 1970s through the 1990s. These are the same people that made LEGO what it was at the time, so firing them was an outrageous move. Nonetheless, it happened, and for about 8 years, LEGO was in the dark ages. It wasn't all bad though. 2 of the most iconic themes of the modern era were released during this time period: LEGO Star Wars and LEGO Harry Potter. These days, there isn't a single person who likes LEGOs and doesn't know about either of these themes. Whether it's the massive sets from the Ultimate Collector's series or the giant Hogwarts castle set, everybody's heard of them at least once in their life. Their success wouldn't come until later though, so unfortunately for LEGO, they were still in the red. That was until 2005. After being down for about 8 years, LEGO finally decided it was time to switch gears and get their head back in the game. They decided it would be best to focus on their core products, and with this, they reintroduced the Duplo theme that had been retired a little while ago. From here on out, it was smooth sailing. They started releasing video games, which as we all know became super popular. Aside from that, they released both the LEGO Games and LEGO Power Miners theme. They didn't last crazy long, but they did decently well for the time. Leave it to LEGO to hit another turning point though. In 2007, they released one of the most iconic sets of all time, which has been remade a bunch of times since its original release. I'm talking about the Millennium Falcon, released in 2007. This was part of the original Ultimate Collector series, and is one of the most sought after sets in all of LEGO. This is a little interesting to me though, because 3 years earlier in 2002, LEGO had released a gigantic Imperial Star Destroyer, but for some reason the Millennium Falcon became the headliner. It doesn't really make much sense to me, but it's whatever I guess. Anyways, the Millennium Falcon was a pivotal moment in LEGO history. Since it became so popular, it showed LEGO that they can easily make sets with more childlike themes and aim them for adults. Some of the most popular sets in recent years have piece counts that are through the roof, and this set is what made that the norm. It had an outstanding 5,219 pieces, which was absolutely insane for 2007. This wasn't the end of LEGO's creativity though. In 2008, they launched the LEGO Ideas program. Originally, it was actually only in Japan, just in case it didn't work out. They had no reason to be timid though, because as we know today, LEGO Ideas is one of the most popular programs ever made by LEGO. Since 2008, 54 fan-made sets have been made into real sets that you can actually buy. Considering it's been 16 years, that really isn't a lot of sets. I guess that just goes to show how picky the people over at LEGO are. LEGO Ideas was a bit of a slow burn though, and at the time LEGO needed immediate success, and their next big move hit the nail right on the head. In 2011, they revealed one of the most popular themes of all time, LEGO Ninjago, and with this theme, they dove right into the deep end. Along with the first sets they released, they also aired the famous TV show Ninjago Masters of Spinjitzu. The show went crazy, raising the sales of sets under the theme exponentially. It seems like LEGO saw the success of LEGO Star Wars and noticed that people are much more willing to buy something when a story is involved. Knowing this helped a lot in Ninjago's rise to stardom. The show has an incredible 4.8 star rating as of today, making it the highest rated LEGO show of all time. Their success in the media industry didn't end there though. Just 3 years later in 2014, the most historical LEGO project of the modern era shocked the world. Of course, I'm talking about the LEGO Movie. There wasn't anything LEGO related that was cooler than this, and the sets that came with it were even cooler. Not only did we get to watch the crazy story of Emmett the minifigure, but we even got to build his beloved double-decker couch, along with 17 other insane sets straight from the movie. My personal favorites are the Super Cycle Chase, Trash Chomper, and Metal Beard Sea Cow sets. Just like before with Ninjago, this was a theory that LEGO had already proven. If you made good media, people will want to buy products for it. Right around this time period though, LEGO was kicking it up a notch in a totally different department. I'm talking about the LEGO Technic sets, and from there on out, they were out of this world. Since 1977, LEGO has been perfecting the Technic line, making sure the sets are more challenging and much more rewarding. The amount of bangers they had in 2015 though was off the charts. Like, check out this 24 hours race car set. This thing is a beast. Even though it's only made up of 1,219 pieces, it has all the functions of the Technic cars of today. Considering this set was released 9 years ago, I'd say that's pretty impressive. In 2016 though, they dropped the very first LEGO Porsche 911 GT3 RS. Today, this set is a staple of the Technic line and is loved by just about everyone. It doesn't end there though. In 2017, they released this awesome LEGO Air Race jet, which looks just like a fighter jet, but in this super cool lightning blue color. Okay, I know I jumped a few years there, but I mean, come on, I had to. These sets are so cool. Going back to 2016, I want to talk about a set that at first glance doesn't really have much significance. This is the Fun in the Park set. While it doesn't look like much, there's actually a minifigure that marks a very important date in LEGO history. This is the baby minifigure, and its first time seeing the light of day was in this set right here. Now, even though LEGO had made smaller figures in the past, they were nothing like this one. First, there were the shorter legs that could be swapped out on any minifigure. Then there were the micro figures that were made to be launched with the LEGO Games theme. And finally, there were nano figures, which didn't really have a reason to be made, but nonetheless were really cool. This baby minifigure is completely different though. It has a whole new body mold that was specifically made for itself. The creation of this little guy sparked the idea for so many different versions. Now he has different outfits, facial expressions, and he even comes in a nice little blanket. Let's move on from that though, and talk about one of the most anticipated LEGO sets of the last 5 years, the LEGO Coliseum. The Coliseum was teased way back in March 2020 before its initial release, and as soon as the internet got a hold of it, there was an instant demand for it. The set wouldn't release for another 8 months, but when it finally did, fans everywhere went crazy. People were scooping this thing up like nobody's business. The set comes with a jaw-dropping 9,036 pieces, and since it was aimed more for adults, there are no minifigures to be found. It's regarded as one of the biggest and most sought-after LEGO sets of the modern era, and I can definitely see why. If you thought that was cool though, wait until you see what LEGO's doing now in 2024. This is the Polaroid camera LEGO set. This is another one of those sets that when the internet got a hold of it, wanted nothing more than for it to be released. But there's a bit of a twist. This set was actually made by a fan and published onto the LEGO Ideas website over a year before it was finally released. I personally saw it in the early days of its lifetime, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever. Now that it's actually available for purchase, there are some sick details that make the set even better. It comes with these 3 Polaroid replicas and a case to hold them in. The Polaroid camera retails for about $80. I suggest you get yourself one before it's gone, because this one's definitely making it into the LEGO history books. But LEGO doesn't just collab with fans. Over the years, they've teamed up with some of the biggest brands in the world, and some of these you've definitely never seen before. Well, what if I told you that they tried to dip their toes into the food business? That's right, back in 2007, LEGO actually had a collab with Kellogg's, one of the biggest food manufacturers in America. Only 2 products were ever released for this collab, the LEGO Eggos and the LEGO Fun Snacks. At first glance, this stuff looks pretty cool, but what LEGO seemed to forget was that their company made toys for kids, so making real food look like their toys probably wasn't the best idea. A lot of parents had complaints about their children putting plastic 2x2 Lego bricks in their mouth after eating the Lego fun snacks. And to be honest, I can't blame them. Those fun snacks were probably pretty good, but because of how similar they look to real Lego bricks, they caused too many problems and ultimately had to be dumped. Up next is a collab with a company you've probably never even heard of. This is a company called Muji, a Japan-based company that specializes in everything related to home goods. Back in 2009, Lego and Muji released a total of 16 different sets over a 2-year time period, and they were actually really unique. What made them so unique is that they came with this Muji brand hole puncher and some paper. The hole puncher was the same size as Lego studs, allowing people to punch as many holes into this paper as they want and add a new creative dimension to their builds. Lego never gave any reason as to why they stopped making these sets, so unfortunately we'll never have an answer. Up next is this insane Lego Crocs collab. Now, I know we've all seen the Lego Adidas shoes, which were released in 2021, but would you believe me if I told you that this isn't the first official Lego shoe? This piece of modern art was released all the way back in 2012, so it seems like Lego had been wanting to make footwear for a while. 5 different colors were released, and I'm just gonna say it right now, I need these. Bad. Unlike your usual everyday Crocs, these bad boys come with a Lego pattern that's wrapped all the way around the entire shoe, along with the Lego logo slapped right on top of it. I think I can speak for all of us when I say that everything looks better with the Lego logo. Not only were there 5 colorways, but some of them actually came with fur on the inside. You're telling me that I could not only look sick in my Lego Crocs, but I could be warm too? Yeah, these are a must. Where's my wallet? Up next is another collab in the clothing business, and if for some reason you didn't like those Crocs, you might like this stuff a little more. This is the Lego Levi's collab, and it's one that I don't think anyone could have seen coming. What business does a toy company have making a product with a denim company? Regardless, it happened, and what we got out of it was pretty cool. The release included hoodies, jeans, a jeans jacket, t-shirts, and hats, all of which had this sick Lego base plate sewn directly onto the garment. They were all branded as wearable art, which is a pretty cool slogan to be honest. This whole thing happened back in 2020, but that doesn't mean it isn't expensive. Currently, everything is out of stock, and if you wanted to get your hands on, let's say, the jacket, you'd have to cough up anywhere from roughly $150 to $300. Man, wearable art does not come cheap. Remember before when I just offhandedly mentioned the Lego Adidas collab? Well, why don't we take a deeper look into that? The most famous product from that partnership is the Lego Adidas ZX8000, but these days there are a bunch of different styles to choose from. One of the more popular ones is this Ultra Boost, but there's another shoe in particular that I want to talk about. This is the Adidas Superstar. It's basically the staple of Adidas shoes, and having been around for over 50 years, I'd say it's for a good reason. Now, this is the Lego Adidas Superstar. Pretty cool, right? It's got a super low-key Lego look to it that is bound to attract people no matter what. But this is the Adidas Superstar we're talking about here. It's literally the staple of Adidas shoes, so Lego had to have done more for this shoe, right? Well, they did, and it's far from wearable. This is the Lego Adidas Superstar set, and it's one of the coolest Lego sets ever. This is one of the only official Lego sneakers ever released, and the fact that they made a wearable shoe to match with it is super sick. This really just goes to show how dedicated Lego actually is. Oh, and by the way, Lego has done some expanding since the original collab back in 2021. There are now Lego hoodies and sweatpants you can buy on the Adidas website, and they even have some baby clothes too. I think I know what gift I'm bringing at the next baby shower. Up next is another collab that was totally unexpected, but I guess that's what this video is all about. Back in 2020, Lego did a huge project with a company known as IKEA. IKEA is one of the biggest furniture manufacturers in the country. They're especially known for making relatively cheap furniture that still looks really nice. It's a brand that's loved by everyone, so instead of just doing your everyday collab, Lego decided to build an entire project. The official name is Bionicle, at least I think that's how you say it, and the whole point was to keep kids playing. They started off by presenting 5 boxes, 1 large box, 1 medium box, and 3 small boxes. All 5 of these boxes are made out of Lego material, so not only are they perfect for storage, but you can actually implement them into your builds. The idea came from a man named Andreas Fredriksson, and the whole reason he did this was because he believed that it's only when you step outside of your comfortable little box that you can really start to make things better, which is absolutely true. Only 1 set was ever released for this project, but sometimes less is more. In fact, the set itself only had 201 pieces and 2 minifigures. But there's something really cool about this set that you might not expect. It doesn't come with any instructions. Now I know that sounds weird, but just let me explain. You see, the whole point behind this project was to inspire creativity, and because of that, IKEA and Lego alike wanted people to buy the set with the storage bins and let their imaginations run wild. This is another one of those instances where you can really see how dedicated LEGO is to what they do. They were able to make an incredible project with one of the biggest brands in America and give it purpose. Nobody does it quite like LEGO. This next collab is actually one that you would never guess, and it's not because of the company. In fact, another company wasn't even involved. It was made entirely possible by crowdfunding, which is insane to think about. A website called Indiegogo hosted a space on their website that allowed a random designer's ideas to come to life. And the best part was that since it was done this way, the designer actually got 10% of the earnings for this project. It was called Lego Forma, and it consisted of a couple fish and a shark made out of Lego Technic parts. Once they were constructed, there was a lever you could turn that made the fish look like it was swimming. Pretty cool, right? These were originally released in January of 2019, and unfortunately didn't make it through the year. But regardless, the sets are still very unique and pretty fun to watch. At this point in the video, you've seen how LEGO has managed to make a name for themselves in a ton of different businesses. But there's still another one that's bound to make you scratch your head. This is the LEGO toothbrush. That's right, I didn't stutter. This is a real toothbrush that was released by Colgate, one of the most well-known dental hygiene companies in the entire world. Now you might be wondering who this weird looking guy in the middle is, so let me tell you about him. This man here is known as Jack Stone, and he was actually the main character of an entire theme made by LEGO in 2001. The theme didn't make it past 2002, but that's not what's important here. For some reason, LEGO decided to throw this guy on a toothbrush in 2002. Now, I could say a lot of things about Jack Stone on his own, but I think I'll keep them to myself. Remember that McDonald's minifigure from before? Well, I think it's time I tell you about him. Back in 1999, LEGO dropped this set as an official release with McDonald's. It was a town exclusive set that came with 98 pieces and 2 minifigures, one of which is this guy. This was the only set ever released with McDonald's, so this minifigure is extremely rare. I mean, considering how many fakes there are, I'd be surprised if you guys even knew he existed in the first place. Regardless though, this is one of those collabs you just don't see very often, so for it to have happened 25 years ago is pretty insane. Up next is a collab in an entirely different league. This is a Lego Technic car. Now, I know what you're thinking. What's so special about a regular old Technic car? Well, this one was actually made together with NASCAR. It's inspired by a real NASCAR, the Chevrolet Camaro ZL1 to be exact. It has a real V8 engine, and the front wheels can actually turn just like in a real car. It has 672 pieces, and unlike just about everything else on this list, you can actually buy it on the LEGO website right now. NASCAR isn't the only sport LEGO has collabed with though. Back in 2003, the first ever LEGO NHL set released, which was huge for back then. We're talking over 20 years ago, when LEGO Star Wars didn't even have much of a name for itself yet. The first set came with only 59 pieces, and was just a model of a hockey player on the ice. Next year though, in 2004, 2 more sets would be released in collaboration with NHL, and they were way better than the one from 2003. First up is the NHL Championship set. It came with 374 pieces, and when you put it all together, you could play a real game of table hockey made completely out of Lego bricks. But that's not even the best part. Since this was the championship set, the minifigures uniforms are based on the NHL All-Star Game uniforms from the 1990s. I think it's safe to say this is one of the most functional Lego sets in history. The third and final NHL set is in a similar boat though. It's called the Street Hockey set, and it's just as the name implies. Once all 114 pieces are put together, you can use your masterpiece to play a game of table hockey, street style. The 2 minifigures may not be as cool as the ones from the championship set, but nonetheless, this set is still super sick. This next collab is one that's pretty famous, but it's for all the wrong reasons. I'm sure you've all seen the Nesquik Bunny minifigure. Sorry if I'm giving some of you guys PTSD, but it has to be done. Now, I know your first reaction when you see this thing is probably to run away, but have you ever actually stopped to think about the fact that LEGO collabed with Nesquik? While this minifigure is super famous, the 3 sets that it came with aren't. Those 3 sets are the Nesquik Quickie Film set, the Nesquik Rabbit set, and the Nesquik Rabbit Racer set. None of them had more than 30 pieces altogether, and were more of a promotional stunt than anything else. All 3 of these sets were released between the years 2001 and 2002 before completely disappearing. But to be honest, I don't think any of us are complaining about that. Keep that guy away from me. The last collab on this list was actually with a store that sells LEGO products. The store I'm talking about is Target, one of the biggest all-purpose stores in America. Only 2 sets were ever released for this collab, and they were a full year apart from each other. You see, they were actually gift cards that came with Lego pieces. The first one released in 2010, and for just $5, you could build your very own Lego Bullseye. Next year, in 2011, they did the same thing, except this time there were 3 different things you can make with the pieces. You can make a snowman, a polar bear, or Bullseye again in case you wanted to have 2. This is one of the only American toy stores LEGO has ever made a set with, and seeing as how you got a gift card with your purchase, I'd say it was pretty worth it, especially considering the fact that it was only $5. These days though, LEGO and Target have all sorts of products to choose from. Whether it's a jacket, or bag, or a few cups, they've got you covered. And that's just scratching the surface of how many collabs LEGO's done over the years. Now we're at the end of the video. I hope you're sleeping well, but if you're still awake, be sure to let me know what your favorite part of LEGO's history was down in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe.